All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
Trucks and stuff couldn't get into the mountains because they were blocked off. And so our solution for that was, what are things we can use to make water filtration?
So our solution was to make water filters, homemade water filters to be precise. And since they have all materials, but activated charcoal. So we thought, well, what about coconuts? So we decided to burn coconuts. And that turns out that it helped us a lot. So we're going to later build our solution and test it on the DPW.
I have to say in closure that the biggest win, trophy aside, which none of us expected, honestly, to lead with, was the teamwork. And we have videos. These guys had to go into 3 10-minute sessions in front of the judges with no other adults. And they had to be questioned by multiple people in these rooms. And the video footage and the rubrics show they rocked it. They came together as a team. They came together as knowledgeable scholars of GMS, and they just brought it. And I have to say, that's more important than any trophy. And going back and looking at our progress this year, and everyone said, wait till next year. Look at what we've learned, wait till what we're gonna do next year. And that, to me, still gives me goosebumps, and couldn't be more proud of these guys and girls.
I just want to say, looking at the progress as you have built the robots and completed these challenges together, it's been really fun watching you learn. You have a good time, you support each other. It's sort of fun seeing when something doesn't work and you learn from it. I've been really impressed. It's really inspiring, and I'm really impressed that you took what you learned and applied it to a community service project and really made something really, really useful. You're not only using technology, you're really benefiting the community, and it was really impressive. Congratulations.
How many people are on the robotics team? How many students altogether?
We had 38 members in our club this year. We had 10 who were slotted to go to competition, and we went with 9 because it was the first snowstorm of the year. So for safety reasons, one person stayed home. So,
and I'd just like to congratulate you and the students on looking at this. And it says under the research, you get exemplary rating quality and variety, including multiple professions and very clear and detailed. So you got the highest rating in every category in research. And I think you should make it and go on Shark Tank.
Any other questions or comments from the committee members? Thank you to all of you and congratulations. This is fantastic and it's speechless. Ms. Cummings, thank you so much for your leadership and any other teachers and faculty and friends and family that helped to support you. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to ask Ms. Kajan. We have a student with us. We're going to talk about this a little later in the program. We're going to talk about the MSA transition and have an update. But we actually had a student that wanted to speak to you directly about their experience with the MSA program that is now housed in Greenfield Middle School. Now, because this is a young scholar who has to get to school again tomorrow morning, I have asked to have a presentation just in this second so they can speak.
I think the transition to the middle school building from MSA was benefited in a lot of ways. The bigger building gives lots of opportunities. You get to do a lot more stuff. There's lots more space. There's more clubs, and I feel like my range of like what I'm able to do has been opened up a little bit, and I thought that was cool. I really like the new things like the gymnasium and the cafeteria are both really good. I like the new teachers that I'm working with, and it's overall been a great experience.
We do not coach him, by the way, in any way. How about anything like, be like,
Well, I feel like some of the MSA kids are kind of separated from the PMS kids, and I like the CSLs, the community service lines, because that gives us a chance to all come together. But I feel like that could be improved upon the amount of time both those schools can spend with each other. And yeah, there's not much else. I really like the building, and if I could pick like one thing to overall say about the transition, I'd say that it's it just gives me a lot more choices, and it's let me do a lot more stuff that is really cool.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or comments? Member Ward?
What grade are you in?
Seventh.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Yeah.
Yes, Lucas, thank you so much for coming to give your input. And you're always welcome. Students are always welcome to come and talk to the school committee directly. Public comment is not just for adults. So keep that in mind. If you ever want to touch base with us directly, you're always welcome.
Thank you.
I have one question for you. I want to know what you think about all the stairs in the building.
That was a struggle at first. That's the main part of my daily exercise. MSA is on the 3rd floor, but I think it's pretty cool. One of the weird things about MSA is that the central office is on like one wing, and then the normal office is on the other. So if you want to get down to the 1st floor for the gym, the cafeteria, or any of the other multiple classrooms there, you can only go down one wing. So often I'll find myself going to go down to the 1st floor, and then realizing that I have to walk back up and go around. So that's sometimes confusing. Yeah. And it's really cool to just have that be part of the building because it makes the building more accessible.
Member Ward says he did the same thing.
First day of basketball, when I came into school and I tried to go down, I got jammed up. Go back up, go around the other side. Oh, I was exhausted. Yeah, you know what you're talking about, dude. Exercise.
Lucas, thank you for coming tonight. And we're glad that MSA is at the event. Thank you. We want you to see that. You can go.
Do it right now.
Unless the committee wants to hear from you. We have some other business.
Let's stick with our order.
Thank you very much. And thank you to your families. Behind you, my tweeting. I'll get back to the tweeting you after this. All right, a couple updates from the school department. First, Greenfield Middle School does have a holiday concert tomorrow, Thursday the 14th. It is at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. Be there or be square. Four Corners, you had a holiday concert yesterday, but there was a snow day. Do you have a rescheduled date?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Four Corners holiday concert next Tuesday, 6 o'clock. Federal Street School is planning their annual wreath walk. It will be coming around this Friday. This is a beloved annual tradition. We look forward to seeing them every year, and you may see them out and about delivering wreaths throughout the community. We are coming up on school vacation. It's actually hard to believe how quickly it came. Not this Thursday, but Thursday the 21st is a half day. We are on vacation for the 21st to January 1st, and we return to school next year on January 2nd, 2018. The central office is closed from Friday the 22nd to Monday the 5th because there is a Christmas holiday. We did have a snow day yesterday, a snow notice, and we have been sending out some reminders around the protocols. We do want to make sure everyone at home knows that this is posted to local media, to TV and radio. It is posted online and social media through the work of our technology director. It is on our website, GPS K-12 as an alert. And we are also working on delivering to you some text alerts. So that's in the works so that we can, we know a lot of you rely on your phones. We still like the phone calling, but we'd like to also be able to deliver via text alerts. So we're working on making that happen. And there was coverage on News 22 actually featured how the Greenfield Public Schools and other Franklin County schools make that decision that was featured yesterday. So please make sure your phone number is updated at your child's school so you can get those alerts. And we also have a new website feature that will be launching soon. Some members of the community have asked how to stay on top of many events at their child's school or even district events like school committee meetings. So we've built a feature of our website which we will be launching in the new year. Stop yelling. We're launching a new feature. I'm going to keep yelling. We are launching a new feature which lets you subscribe to alerts. So you can pick a specific school or all district, and this will actually send you an alert rather than having to come back and check our website because we know how much you want to stay on top of those events, and we want to make it easy for you to do so. Just in time to end my report. Just kidding. I have a few other things in your packet. In the packet, you have newsletters from all of our schools as they work to make sure families know what's happening. How's that? Can you hear a little now? Great. Thank you. Okay. In your packet, you have newsletters from all the schools as they work to stay in touch with our families. And there's a copy for the committee provided tonight. Most of these are also online, so please be sure you know what's happening at our schools. You have the monthly business office report, which includes all of our balances, including our revolving gift and scholarship funds and our general ledger report. And you also have here a grants report.
report provided to the committee. That's here in the business office report. If anyone has questions for the business office, we have our business manager here with us tonight. David from TMS is here. You also have information, there is a bulletin from the Mass Association of School Superintendents that highlights the bill that Governor Baker has signed that allows for some provisions around bilingual education, and the chair of the school committee had asked that this be brought to the attention of the committee. We have some information on that, as well as the Department of Education guidance on welcoming students from Puerto Rico, which we have been doing and will continue to do. And at the back of that is the federal guidance on the flexibility for students who have been affected by natural disasters, hurricanes, and so forth. So that information is in your packet as well. And I believe that is the conclusion of my section of the superintendent's report. Thank you. And thanks so much to everybody that spoke earlier. Terrific to have students here with us tonight.
Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from committee members? Okay, seeing none.
May I make a request?
Yes.
We do have as the first item another guest under business. Maria Scatera is here to discuss the Greenfield High School band trip for the MICA concert. I would request that the committee would consider moving that piece of business up before subcommittee reports.
Are any members opposed to moving business A? Okay, let's do so. Maria, welcome. Thank you.
Hello. I'm here to propose an overnight field trip. It's actually for the band and chorus. We have two bands. The wind ensemble is the advanced band. We have two choruses. The select choir is the advanced chorus. So I'd like to take the select choir and the wind ensemble on an overnight trip. There are three components. The main component being something called the MICA Festival for Solo and Small Ensembles. So students would be performing for judges and getting some feedback. Two other components to the trip. One would be to have community service, so we would play for a Boston area nursing home, followed by listening to the Boston Symphony Orchestra with a tour afterwards of the building. So the three components were first giving our gifts, then listening to high quality music, and then judging our own playing, making our own playing better. And I'm not sure if you have a copy of the details.
They do.
Okay.
Are there any questions? Any questions or comments from committee members? Member Hollins.
I was just wondering if we rewrote our policy on trips that involve travel overnight or from 5 a.m. to whatever, and had certain components. So it's wonderful to hear a proposal that's hard to know without someone saying we followed the guidelines, you know, of our new policy.
So for the 28 students, I have 5 chaperones, including Secretary Alexander. Thank you. And I believe that's in the guidelines. It is not within the guidelines?
No, it is. It's just,
I can speak to
it isn't a criticism of your proposal. It's just, it would be nice when we have a trip request if someone would say, we've taken care of everything in the policy.
Superintendent?
The policy has been reviewed, and I recommend this field trip.
Is a vote needed for this?
Yes, please.
That would be for the record that we are approving the select choir and wind ensemble overnight trip led by Maria Scatera for April 27, 2018 to April 28, 2018. Any further comment or discussion?
That's great.
Yep. I would just say the same thing. I think that this is great. I really appreciate seeing that we are getting our students
out and about into a lot of different places, including Boston. It's right here in our backyard. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for them to experience something that's a little bit out of the usual and offer an opportunity for enrichment in a lot of ways. So thank you so much for all that you do and for leading this trip. Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, before we move on to subcommittee reports, I am seeing Superintendent out-of-district placement update. Did you have any comment on that?
Sorry, I forgot to mention it. I don't believe it was in your packet, although it was in the electronic version that was mailed out. And our Director of People Services put together an updated projection. This was a request of the chair as well, for some specific information on particular projections that will be helpful as we move into the budget cycle. There's no action, there's no deliberation needed on this. It's informational only. So although it wasn't in your packet, if the committee would like to do so, I can distribute it. If you'd prefer to hold for a future meeting, I can do so.
Let's distribute it now so everyone has the information. Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions or comments related to this report that we're receiving now?
Can we look at it for 1 second?
Sure. Yes, Member Hollins.
I have a question. I'm glad to see the prepay. I think it's really important. I was just wondering if from whether we did the prepay from balance or from general fund balance or from a fund.
I can speak to business office and Director of People Services are here as well, but it's a combination. We do use circuit breaker. We do pay for it from our special education revolving fund. At times we juggle. For example, when we've had a cut to our operating budget, as in this year, we do juggle funds in order to address this. But typically circuit breaker, special education revolving, and if available, we do utilize available remaining balances. For example, if there were leftover funds in the general fund, we might use that to prepay.
Did any of the prepay come from last year's general fund balance?
I don't have that in front of me. I don't believe so.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, so we will move on now to subcommittee reports. Let's start with Member Ward. Did Health and Safety meet this month, Member Ward?
No.
Okay. And
We're scheduled to meet again on Christmas. At 5 o'clock. We'll probably do something with that.
well, I'll be in town, so maybe I'll stop in.
I won't be there, but we are scheduled to meet in January. We meet the fourth Monday of every other month. We're going to have to do something with that date, obviously, but no, I'm sorry, December. We're scheduled to meet here in December, but we're going to have to do something with the date.
Okay. Member Tripp?
The Personnel and Collective Bargaining Subcommittee met on November 28th. The primary purpose of our discussion was to discuss superintendent goals and proposed goals. We had asked the superintendent to essentially modify and add more information to the goals. Unfortunately, due to my oversight, I didn't get the actual revised goals sent to Joanne, so we can't take action on those tonight. However, I do have a copy of the full set, and they were part of our meeting, our subcommittee meeting. I can get everybody a full copy, but it is the consensus of the subcommittee to recommend the acceptance of these goals. Unfortunately, it's going to have to get pushed until January for a vote, unless unless somehow we get together before the first of the year. So, does anybody have any questions about that? The superintendent was very responsive to our request to modify and increase and essentially make a document that a lay person such as myself can understand the rationale and the reasoning for what it is we're trying to do. So, that's all.
Any questions or comments from committee members? Okay, I will just say I serve on that committee, and the intent was to bring it to the full committee in this month, and we are all a little disappointed in not having it here for the committee. However, we will just look forward to the meeting in January, and Member Tripp, if you could work with the Superintendent Harper to get out those final goals, that would be great, so everyone has plenty of time to review them.
Certainly.
Yes, Member Hollins.
May I go back to a question on this, please?
Sure.
I'm sorry, but we only had a second to look at it. The prepay law, the statute, is a statute that it's the only exception where you can use money from one budget year to pay for a cost in the next budget year, and it's specific to special education tuition for summer months. And that's what prepay is. You're taking money from the year we just finished, fiscal year 16-17, and you're taking money from that year and you're paying it for something in 18. If we're not using money from our budget, it's different with the revolving funds because you can use them for 24 months, but it isn't the same. So it's not really prepay. I just wanted to clarify that. So if we didn't use any money from our general fund, moving it out of our general fund into the next year, if we paid tuition out of a revolving fund, it's not technically prepay from the prior year general fund. So I'm just confused. If no money from our general fund balance last year was used, I don't think it's a...
Superintendent?
So the item from the chair was the out-of-district projection, not the prepayment of tuition. So this is specific to actual students. This is a very accurate accounting. There is a figure here about prepay, but the specific item that was put in front of the committee tonight, the intent was to provide a projection. The specific question that was asked, I'm happy to find the specific line items and the balances and get that information to you. I just don't have it here tonight because it wasn't the intent of the report. We are compliant with prepaid laws, though.
No, I just would like it labeled correctly so we didn't misunderstand what it was. I don't have a question with the fact that we paid it at all. If it didn't use general fund money, it's just how it's labeled.
We'll get you that information.
Thank you. Member Alexander, could you report on your subcommittee?
The special ad hoc committee for determining internal goals for the school committee, which is not to be confused with the district goals that Member Tripp just was discussing a moment ago. We've met on the 30th, and tonight in the packet and also emailed out last week was a draft for internal goals for this school committee itself, and hopefully later on in the agenda I would like to make a motion to for the school committee to adopt. I also want to thank members Nunez and Farrell for actively participating in this special committee. We did design this to be just for our own committee in itself. I also like to thank Member Hollins and the Superintendent for attending these meetings as well and providing their input. So again, later on the agenda, I hope to bring a motion for us to adopt these goals.
Any questions or comments from committee members? I just want to clarify that the goals that Member Tripp was discussing are actually superintendent goals. And there are 3 different sets of goals that we've been talking about over the past couple of months. And one of them is the superintendent goals, which coincides with the superintendent evaluation. This is an annual evaluation that we are required to perform and we look forward to. And so those goals are what we were hoping to bring forward to the full committee. As well, there are district goals that are generally can be outlined separately from the strategic plan or somehow be incorporated into the strategic plan. And the district goals are what I believe we will be having in more conversation in the coming months. And the goals that are here that we worked on in the subcommittee are schools committee goals. These are governance goals specific to ourselves as a governing body. And in an ideal situation, all of our goals would really work to support one another, to support student achievement and success in our district in general. So would you like to move the acceptance of these goals now?
Madam Chair, at this time, I would like to make the motion that the draft goals that are in the packet for internal goals of the Greenfield School Committee be adopted.
Is there a second? Member Farrell seconds. Any discussion? Member Tripp?
I would just comment after having a chance to review these goals. I appreciate your time spent in the special subcommittee to take a look, and I think that this is the right forward progress for the committee as a whole, and I say that both for you and for the members who are joining, who are in the audience today, that this idea of trying to improve our own functioning and our own governance, this is great. So I appreciate your time and I appreciate the goals that you worked out.
Member Farrell?
I think there was a lot of discussion at the beginning of our first committee meeting of what exactly the charge of the full school committee to this subcommittee was, whether it was to establish district goals, more targeted, more specific around curriculum and student achievement and those types of things. And we felt as though that really, if that was the intent of some members, it probably shouldn't have been. It shouldn't be. Number one, I didn't feel, personally speaking, that we should be looking to establish goals for a school year in December. But that's a whole nother subject. And I also thought, it was often discussed that most school districts, most school committees do not have goals for themselves. They don't establish goals for themselves. In fact, maybe none do. And if they don't, they should. Because with school committees, what we find is there's turnover. And in our case, you see there's 2 members here that have only been here 2 years that are now leaving, and there'll be two new members, and that's great. But I think it's important for committees like this to establish goals for themselves, how to be a better school committee, how to better represent the citizens and students of their community, how to work closer with administrators and staff throughout the district. And that's what this does. It's not there to talk about what we want. We want to see better test scores. We want to increase graduation rates. We want to see a collaboration between GCC and GHS. Those are all things that I want to see as a parent and a citizen of Greenfield. But we didn't feel so that was the charge of this ad hoc committee. This is how can we make the school committee a better school committee. And believe it or not, there is room for improvement with all school committees, with all government bodies. And this is a great place to start. This is a great, I think this was a great beginning to something that should be ongoing about how to make the committee better and how to make the committee more responsive to the district, to the people that work for the district, to the students and to the community and the taxpayers. So that's what this was about. And I know the school committee moving forward and probably, because I think one of the goals was to establish an ad hoc committee to look at establishing working harder and more in tune with the administration, the superintendent, and the staff and teachers and students and that type of thing to develop those district goals to see what you want for student achievement. that's going to be a goal of the school committee, to do a better job at doing that, to be more a part of that, and all of these other things, so that we have a strong committee moving forward for this. These goals actually go to July 1st, 2019, because again, it's to establish goals for 6 months didn't seem to make much sense. So that's why we went in this direction. So I would ask everyone to support these goals as written.
Member Hollins? I have 3 comments. One is a significant major charge of our committee for our own work is policy work. And we have committed, starting 2 years ago, to update our policy manual. And our focus, in addition to needs that come up and interests and concerns, has initially been sections B and D, school committee operations and financial management. So I'd like to ask that we have a 4th goal, which is policy, and to say to continue our work updating our policy manual with specific focus on sections I and J, because that's been in our minutes what we've talked about. That's the policies related to student instruction and student services, which keep coming up almost at every meeting, but we've already started that, so I think that would round this out because we have one on budget. And my second comment is under the first goal, actually 2 comments under that goal. One, it says to form an ad hoc subcommittee, and it's just kind of a policy thing. Our policies say we have 2 kinds of committees. We have subcommittees and we have advisory committees. And we don't have a policy that says we have an ad hoc committee. So if we could just clarify, is this a subcommittee of our board that's going to meet in January, February, or an advisory committee? And then secondly, on the second part about working to improve our budget process, which I think is a fabulous and pertinent goal, I think we've been refining. So I like this goal, but there's 2 areas of our budget process that are related to statute that have come up again and again, and I don't know if we could add it to the middle one, and that is we have a specific responsibility under budget to develop an annual professional development plan for everyone, including the school, everyone, and a budget for it. That's a statute that it should be part of our budget process. And the second is there's a statute that says we develop compensation plans for administrators and principals. That is not to take away any negotiating of this superintendent at all, but those 2 issues have come up before, and I would say those are statutory requirements and weaknesses, and I would love it if we addressed that under the second part of the goal on budget, just those 2 pieces that we don't do fully yet. That's it for me.
Are you offering any amendment?
Yes. I'd like to offer an amendment that we add a 4th goal under policy to continue work updating the school committee policies with a focus on sections I, instruction, and J, students. And under operation, to replace the word ad hoc with either subcommittee or advisory, whichever is what's intended. And third, to maybe add a phrase after the second item of operation, maybe that says, and address the 2 statutory provisions for annual professional development plan and administrative compensation plans.
Could you repeat the last one, please?
And to address the 2, I don't remember exactly what I said, to address the 2 statutory budget responsibilities of annual professional development plan and administrative compensation plan. There's a specific statute for each one. PD plan, we're required to have a budget for professional development in our budget.
Thank you. Member Farrell?
The first one being that I think it's easy enough to change ad hoc to advisory. And moving forward, if it's determined by the chair, whether it's the mayor or if there's a new chair, that could be changed to a subcommittee if you guys agree to change the policy and add a subcommittee. So why don't we start first with that, a motion to amend and add advisory, striking ad hoc. That would be my motion.
Second.
Member Alexander?
Yes, I can go with, agree with Committee Member Farrell and Committee Member Hollins. We can strike the phrase ad hoc subcommittee and put in advisory committee if the chair so wishes.
Okay, and so we will vote on that quickly. All those in favor of replacing ad hoc with advisory? Aye. Member Ward?
No.
No. Member 1, no. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. Yes, Member Farrell.
I also think that we could add as far and basically add to into the operations as continue policy work as and you can wordsmith it, those who like to wordsmith, continue policy work to focused on improvement, focused on committee improvement or governance improvement for the committee. I don't think that we should be specific about sections because that's not really what the emphasis of this document was. So I don't have a problem if someone wants to come up with a way to address the. Sure.
Yes, Member Alexander.
I do disagree with adding anything else to this, especially if it has to address policy work. Policy is a statutory requirement, and this document is an operational requirement just for us to perform better as school committee members. So anything with policy would need to be with I think, the district policy.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you would not accept an amendment to add in language related to the updating of the policy manual. And does that also include the third suggestion from Member Hollins? Prioritization of annual professional development plans and compensation plans?
Yes, that's correct. I second that.
Okay, do we?
Well, there's no motion.
We don't need to.
There's no motion.
No motion
So
on
unless
that.
someone makes a motion, there's no motion.
Okay. So at this time, the motion on the table is to accept the goals as written with the one edit to change the word ad hoc to advisory in the first sentence under operation. We have the motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Member Farrell, were you in favor?
Yes.
1 no. Thank you. So the school committee goals for December 2017 to July 2019 have passed. Thank you very much for that. And Member Farrell, if you could give us a little update on the Greenfield High School Building Committee meeting.
I can.
Thank you.
So the GHS Building Committee met on 12/6. There were 3 pieces of business. The first was acceptance of the audit presented from Mass School Building Authority, which we did. part of that, the second part of the second point of business that we had to do was acceptance of the final budget numbers that were given to us, and I'm going to use round numbers. It was approximately $2 million in excess borrowing authority, meaning that we were $2 million under budget, money we didn't borrow for the project. So at that point, the building committee had a choice of recommending to the mayor not to borrow any additional funds or a recommendation to borrow a certain amount of that excess borrowing authority. Our recommendation was to borrow an additional $730,000, leaving a balance of 1.6 and to be rescinded at a later date at the council. And that spending is as follows: $200,000 for the solar project. This is all money that will be spent for the high school. It couldn't be spent anywhere else. Any other school district, any other public building, any new project coming down the line, just on GHS. So it was $200 for the solar project, $235 for technology equipment, $101,000 for vets field improvements and other athletic equipment, $60,000 additional furniture, $35,000 new GHS digital sign, $30,000 elective classroom equipment, $20,000 expanded security key card system, expansion of the security key card system, $6,000 for additional defibrillators, and $5,500 for roof safety improvements needed for maintenance purposes. So again, that I believe almost everything that came forward was approved for additional spending. The GHS project, the committee also, I believe I had to leave early because I forgot to pick my kids up, so I don't know if this happened, but we were also supposed to vote to give back the high school to the Greenfield Public School System, which we never did, technically. Okay, so I'll do that. There you go. It's yours. So, but I think everyone should be very proud that was involved in this, from the teachers and the administration that had to deal with building a school and still using that same school at the same time, as well as everyone on the building committee and all the contractors involved. Greenfield was formerly known as the place to look when you're looking at how not to build a school building. Now we will be looked at as this is how you do it. So we're really lucky that this project went the way that it did. There are still, just tonight when I walked in, I saw Coach Kucheski, and he reminded me of a item that was on the to-do list during the project, after the project was done, but we all forgot about it, including him, until after it was too late, after we voted. So we still need money to put up netting by the softball fields out back, is that right? Yeah, out back. So someone put that on the list of things to do. I think that was about $75,000. It wasn't cheap. So that we don't have softballs going over the backstop into cars at the drive-through. So other than that, success. And that's my report.
Thank you. Member Hollins.
I just want to thank not only for the whole school, but this last piece was really important to the school district. It has everything to do with their budget that will set for next year, being able to include some item. It wouldn't be possible if the whole project hadn't come in under budget, so we could go back to things we needed. And in the last 6, maybe 2 meetings ago, I know since maybe starting 2 meetings ago, there's been a lot of discussion, reports from the school, subcommittee meetings, clarifying what money is available, how do we use it, getting reports from technology and different people. So this last bit for the school system, I think is really important. I want to thank the mayor, Tim, budget committee, superintendent. So this last piece is just really important, and I thank everybody who's involved. Probably people that aren't involved in the schools don't recognize how important it is, but it's really important.
Thank you, Member Hollins. Superintendent?
I'd like to thank everyone that served on the high school building committee. A lot of people gave a lot of time. There was a lot of community input, a lot of school committee involvement, good cooperation between the town. And it was a really fruitful project, really interesting to be a part of. And the product of that project is this beautiful building that we're sitting in today. And also I'd like to thank Member Hollins for her work as the former superintendent at the time that the project was begun. And projects, when we're visioning for the future and for our students, we are really planting seeds today that don't bear fruit for a long time, and it's really exciting when a project comes to fruition, and this was a great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, moving on, Member Hollins, Policy Subcommittee Report.
There are two sets of minutes in your packet. The latest minutes aren't there because I have had an ongoing computer problem, but I will say for the audience that we revised our policy on creating policy as we go through the policy manual. So typically, policies come before the school committee no less than twice, but we revised it so the policies that aren't changing and no one sees the need to change them, we can just say we've reviewed them, we don't need to change them in one vote. So we have a collection coming through for one vote, and the chair asked if I would just briefly go over, very briefly, just what those policies are and what they say without reading them. School committee member authority, BBBA, these are going to be the policies hopefully affirmed with just one vote because they're not changing. This basically says we need to learn the laws of the state, and we have no authority as individual members, only when we sit here and act as a body. BDD, school committee superintendent relationship, says that the superintendent advises the school committee and the committee makes ultimate decisions on matters of general policy and expenditure of funds, but it relies on the superintendent's advice. Policy BE, school committee meetings, says we have two kinds of meetings, regular meetings and special meetings, but every meeting is open to the public, including subcommittee meetings. Policy BEDA, notification of school committee meetings, basically saying we comply with the Attorney General's state guidelines that they have to be posted 48 hours in advance. Policy BEDD, rules of order, says that we follow Robert's rules of order in our proceedings. The chairperson is the parliamentarian unless the chairperson asks someone else to be the parliamentarian. Policy BEDF, voting method. It says that we vote on every decision we make. If it's a unanimous vote, we only have to record that it's a unanimous vote, but if it's not unanimous, we have to record how the vote went, and that we follow Robert's rules. BEDG, minutes. It says that our minutes are the legal evidence of our actions. Basically, what has to be in the minutes, the time we start and end, and the approved minutes are permanent records of the Greenfield School Committee. BGD, which is confusing because it's in the policy manual twice, also under section C, CHB. It's called School Committee Review of Regulations. It's important. It says that generally the school committee doesn't review regulations. It's expected that the administration makes regulations that go along with policy to operate the school. But when the school committee specifically asks that it review regulations, or when the school committee thinks that regulations are not conforming to the policy, or when there's a specific law that says the school committee will vote regulations, then we do vote regulations. BIBA, school committee conferences, conventions, and workshops, says that we will keep a calendar of what's coming up and make sure we have funds, and the school committee members are reimbursed if we have the funds for that, and it's approved. But it commits to our committee having continued professional training. Policy LA, education relations goals, says that we appreciate the importance of the greater environment in which our school system exists, and we encourage cooperative work with other educational agencies. Policy LB, relations with other schools and school districts, which has come up lately. It says that we are committed to cooperating with other schools and with local, state, and regional agencies to seek solutions for educational problems, acquire federal grants, offer support, high-quality services, as long as it's in our interest, our students' interests. Policy LBC, relationships with non-public schools. It talks about our role under the law of approving private schools that want to open in our town, and also recognizing that other private and parochial schools have a lot to offer. Our policy is that we cooperate with these schools in matters of mutual benefit when the law doesn't prohibit it. Policy KLK, relationships with government authorities. It says we're committed to cooperatively working with other agencies in order to have improved services. And lastly, policy IHAE, physical education, which was rewritten in 2011, says that we support a coordinated K-12 physical education program, and it gives 6 national standards for physical education that we'd like to support. That's the policy grouping for no changes recommended. If you want to, I don't know if you want to vote that, but.
Now is a fine time.
So would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
So I'd like to motion that we affirm the slate of policies reviewed this evening, recommended to continue with no change.
These are policies BBA, BDD, BE, BEDA, BEDD, BEDF, BEDG, BGD, CHB, BIBA, LA, LB, LBDC, KLK, and IHAE.
May I correct 2? The first one is BBAA, and the last one is LBC.
Physical education?
No, the LBC is relations with non-public schools. I think when you read it, you had an extra letter.
LBC. Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? Superintendent?
Yes, these are coming forward as policies for affirmation with no change. Before the committee met and the last time, I provided the MASC model policy for every one of these policies. I would like to note which policies have a variation, a difference between our policy as it would be voted tonight and the MASC model policy. I will read the policies that have a difference. These were provided electronically and in hard copy. Policy BBAA, policy BDD, policy BE, policy BEDA, policy BEDD, policy BEDF, policy BEDG, policy BGD, which is also CHB, which is also CHA, BIBA, LBC, which was listed incorrectly by the request of the policy subcommittee as LBDC and IHAE. So I recommend that the 3 remaining policies are considered tonight as opposed to those that differ from the superintendent's recommendation of the MASC policy as requested. I would suggest that the committee consider instead LA, education relation goals, LB, relations with other schools, KLK, relation with government authorities.
Okay. Any further discussion? Member Hollins?
I'd like to say that our committee has reviewed these at length. Our goal isn't to make sure our policies are exactly like the model policy of MASC. Our committee tries to decide if our policies make sense for us. So, for example, the first policy mentioned on school committee member authority, it is different, and it's different because in 2011, the school committee added an item to accept fiscal responsibility and act in the best interest of the Greenfield Public Schools. We reviewed that. We don't see a need to eliminate that because it's not in the state policy. So there are tiny changes where, however, the point is our committee went over all of these, and we think these are fine to continue as they're written. And probably all of them we've reviewed multiple times. So I don't think that's ever been the goal, is to make sure our policies are exactly like a sample policy. It's to go over our policies as a school committee and make sure we feel they're what we want to recommend to the school committee.
Superintendent, the committee may vote any policies that it wish. I'm simply here to advise the committee. In this instance, there were 3 policy meetings scheduled in the month of December. There were 37 policies reviewed. There were numerous administrators that were present, reviewed, or in other words, contributed. This particular meeting was held at a time that the superintendent was known to be unavailable, and I went through and reviewed model policy in advance at the request of the chair of this committee, and I submitted in advance my recommendations. So I would stand by my recommendation with the noted exception of the one policy that was read, which was voted in 2011. Most of the others have been unchanged since 2005, a few in 2011, but I would stand by my recommendation to vote those policies which do not differ in any significant way from the MASC policy, because not to vote them tonight as an affirmation has no practical effect. They are our current policies, so you're not gaining anything by not voting them, but it will discourage committees in the future from looking more closely at these when there is guidance on updating language. Thank you.
Member Farrell?
And not to stop discussion, but there's a motion and a second, and as was pointed out, if the committee wants to vote it down, the committee can vote it down. I know that two of the sitting committee do sit on the policy subcommittee, so there's a motion and a second. If you want this to go back to committee, vote it down and it'll go back to committee. But I don't think that we should get into a back and forth at this point as far as making changes or not making changes. We should just go forward with the process.
Member Hollins, you had your hand up?
I was just going to say that we did review the superintendent's comments. The mayor has gone over this with me twice. Don's been at the meetings. And we feel comfortable that if we spend time on changing policies, these aren't policies we need to spend time changing. We have a lot of other work to do.
These policies are no change, is that correct?
These policies are no change. Any other comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none, we do have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm a no. Any abstentions? One abstention. Motion passes. Thank you. And I believe there's more in your report, or are you?
No, I'll go on. I just want to say the policy work where we do have discussion for changes in October and November, it was passed both months, so I just hope at some point before the meeting ends, we can get to the policies that need action.
Yes. Thank you, Member Hollins. So I will finish up the subcommittee report with a report from the Budget Subcommittee. There are minutes in your packet from November as well as December. That's because our November meeting was very close to the full committee meeting last time, and you all did not receive them in your packet last month. So the November minutes are there, and we met on December 5th at 3:30 p.m. We intended to have discussion on an early childhood services report, but for various reasons, that report has been postponed until the coming year. We still look forward to talking about early childhood services, but that is delayed slightly. So we jumped right in on December 5th with some discussion about policy DBB entitled Budget Format New. There was quite a bit of discussion about this, about potentially modifying cost centers and the language of the policy, and the consensus was to table the conversation. However, there was support to continue at the next subcommittee meeting and to clear up understanding of this potential policy, because it is a new suggested policy, or continue conversation on cost centers at the before the upcoming budget cycle. So that essentially means that this conversation will continue in January. We also discussed the Ghs Construction Funding. This gave us an opportunity to give Member Farrell a little bit of input at the subcommittee level before he chaired the Ghs Construction meeting. And the recommendation, we heard recommendations from administrators and principals, and we had committee consensus to support utilizing the funding for technology, furniture and equipment, security and safety equipment, ancillary items for electives, repairs at Vets Field, signage, and other recommendations put forward. So as Member Farrell just reported out, we did secure some funding for some of these items. We also discussed very briefly, the FY18 supplemental budget request. And if we recall in the past, the council suggested that we could come forward with a request for supplemental funding. The subcommittee consensus was to support very quickly to request the 1% back from the FY18 operating budget, and we considered this to be a very high priority. There was some discussion about timing, and the timing is that we need to be voting on this today, and I believe that David and the superintendent are here to speak a little bit further on that. And then we did have another topic of discussion, which was any recommendations to new committee members and any recommendations moving forward into the budget development calendar. And that item was tabled due to timing. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to support a request for supplemental funding. Or do we have an exact figure?
I don't know that we have an exact dollar figure here. Business manager says no, but the total percentage was 1% of the school's budget from FY18.
I'd be willing to make a motion that we return for supplemental funding to restore the 1% cut from our budget with a guarantee that it would be reinstated.
Is there a second? Second from Member Farrell. Superintendent, could you please give us a brief report on this? Thank you.
Sure. And I would like to just say, in terms of the language, it might be helpful for clarity to request that the mayor present to the council a request, because procedurally only the mayor can put that request before the council. As you recall, in last year's budget cycle, there was a cut of 1% across the board. In the subcommittee and at the full committee level, the superintendent requested direction from the committee as to how to approach that cut to our FY18 operating budget. And the committee direction at that time was essentially not to cut, was to strive for efficiencies, but not to reduce total expenditures, which relates to salary. In any school department budget, anytime you're making cuts, we're really talking about people hours, teacher hours, instructional assistant hours. And the committee direction at that time was not to make operational cuts that would impact services, but instead to to adjust from later, the third or fourth quarter, and sort of pull it forward to address for the shortfall. That has been our approach at the direction of the committee since last budget cycle. And as the town is moving forward with the process of free cash certification, at this time it was discussed at the Budget and Finance Subcommittee level that this would be the appropriate time to return to the council for those funds that were assured that departments, including the school department, could come back to the council if those funds were still needed. We have looked for and achieved efficiencies in several areas. However, it is still prudent to come for that 1% to avoid operational deficits in the fourth quarter of FY18.
Member Farrell.
Just real quick, a couple things. Number one is to, I think it's important to look back. When the council voted the 1% cut, they did so, I don't think they necessarily had a full grasp of what they were doing, because they cut a 1% out of the education line. The education line includes the technical school, which they can't cut because that budget was already accepted by 2/3 of the communities in the Franklin County technical school system. So some on the council will tell you that it was $164,000. Some on the council will say it was 1% of which was $194,000 or thereabouts. So personally, I don't know exactly what it was that they voted. So go for 200, and that will make it clear. I also think that it really needs, and this is for educational purposes, because I can even tell you as a 10-year school committee member, or as a counselor, 2-year school committee member, you know, we would sit as a council and look at school choice revolving accounts and look at circuit breaker revolving accounts and say, oh, just spend that money. Keep spending that money. You still have revolving account money. Why aren't you spending that? There really needs to be a lot more education at the council level, and I don't fault counselors, because again, as a longtime counselor and select board member, I've only got a better grasp of it in the last 2 years, is getting them to understand if you spend it now, it won't be here for the next fiscal year. So that's really needs to be where you need to target in that craft the debate that they're going to have at the council level, because that's going to be where they will point back to and say, well, there's still funding in those revolving accounts. And I think it's important that we looked at those revolving accounts, and specifically there's certain things that you can spend it on and certain things you can't. So those would be my 2 suggestions. At this point, nobody in the community, none of the other departments have gone back or at least publicly asked for supplemental budgets. I think that will occur. Better we do it now before everybody else jumps on board.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. I believe
Cam votes yes.
I'm not sure how that should be documented. He's absent, so great. So motion passes. Thank you. And that concludes my subcommittee report. So we will move on to the Discovery School at Four Corners Innovation School report.
Make sure the button is.
Good evening, everyone. I was asked to come tonight to give a kind of a brief update on our school as an annual kind of status. So I'm here tonight as the principal, but I'm also here tonight as the co-chair of our school council. And I brought with me our other co-chair. For those that don't know, Sarah Ahern Belmare is a parent in our school and has been on our school council for 3 years, so she's been there longer than I have. And we're going to talk tonight a little bit about the school school. Before we do, I did just want to say thank you for this opportunity to come to you directly. You know, I like this idea of schools being able to come forward and talk directly with the school committee about, you know, what's going well in our school and just briefly touch on the highlights and what's going on. So that being said, we're going to tell you a little bit about Four Corners.
Try here. The Discovery School at Four Corners is a kindergarten through 4th grade innovation school. We have a focus on thematic learning, gardening, and environmental studies. This year, for instance, our school-wide theme is flight, and examples of past themes are bridges, continents, and water. We are lucky enough to have a 9-acre school setting where the children have hands-on opportunities for planting, gardening, harvesting, recycling, composting, as well as forest studies and exploring in our new nature trail. Additionally, under the school's innovation status, the teachers at the Discovery School benefit from additional time to collaborate and plan. While teacher collaboration is a cornerstone of the program, the parent, guardian, and community participation and partnerships are also crucial and enhance the overall program. That's a little bit about our school.
On the back side of the paper, you'll see a little bit about our current demographics. So right now, we currently have fully enrolled 253 students, and you can see it broken down by grade. For free and reduced lunch, we're currently 33% of our families qualify for free or reduced lunch, and 15 English language learners in our school. Highlights over the past year, I won't read this entire list, but I will say that I think one of the things that has really been happening well at Four Corners is our school council. It's in its 5th year as a school entity, and it's really, the group has been doing a lot of really strong, productive work within the school. In the past few years, they drafted the school improvement plan, which was a pretty comprehensive document. This past year, we reviewed that plan to update it for next year for a new 2-year cycle. So that's been a lot of, you know, good collaboration, good work, important work that's been done, and it's aligned with the district's strategic plan. Another thing I'm really excited about this year is we started an instructional leadership team, and this is more of a school-based team. In some schools, they're called the building leadership teams or school leadership teams, but it's a group of the staff that's kind of works as an advisory group to the principal. You know, there's a lot of research in the past decade or so that, you know, a building cannot be run by just one individual, and so to really get feedback from a group of people within the building about how to move forward. What do we do for our faculty meetings? What are our PD plans? Let's look at our school data and things like that. So I'm really excited that we were able to start that this year. We've got a group that's really enthusiastic about doing this work. They're meeting after school on their own time to do it. And, you know, it's a great, just another example of people stepping up to do more for our schools. And with that, among our students, we have a student council that we started up last year, which has been doing great stuff, some community service and fundraising and whatnot, and it's really been kind of a leadership training for those older students in 3rd and 4th grade. Things we're really looking forward to is you heard a little bit about the thematic approach that we do in themes. Traditionally, we've had 3 themes that we've cycled between: flight, continents, and bridges, but we've decided to start a 4th new theme, and we kind of surveyed families, what would they be interested in, and students and staff, and we decided to do a water theme. So we're going to do that for the first time next year. We're really devoting a lot of our PD time to prepare for that this year, and teachers are really excited to have that as a new theme for next year. Some of our challenges, I got a list of a few here, but in recent MCAS data, one of the things that kind of stood out for us was writing, and that wasn't a surprise to us, but an area that we know we've got to work on further. And facility space, building space, we're feeling pretty tight in our building right now. We've got, we're really stretching to efficiently use every nook and cranny of the building. We've got supplies in hallways. We at times have to, teachers work with students in the hallways or in other common areas. So we're kind of feeling that pressure. And even outside of the building, for those that are familiar with dismissal time at the Discovery School, parking on Ferrante and whatnot, really having a building that meets our needs of the current population. So I just wanted to give a quick rundown, but we can certainly take any questions that you have about our school.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Member Hollins?
I had two questions, quick questions and a comment. Thank you for the enrollment. Do you have in each grade 2 classes for that grade, or there's some that there's 3 classes for the grade?
We have 3 sections in every grade, with the exception of 3rd grade. We have 2 sections.
Thank you. And I wanted to say that I love everything you said. I think your winter theme will probably be fabulous, and I love the student council and everything you're doing, really. So, and I want to thank Sarah. It's very nice for you to come. I want to say that to have the designation of Innovation School as opposed to Greenfield Elementary School, there's 2 unique features. One is you have to have specific goals, and you're allowed to have unique features that other schools don't have. So just as an individual member, if I would expect in an update some comment on those specific goals, because that's the reason you have the designation of Innovation School. And I just say that it's hard to have an Innovation School update and not hear, like, these were our goals and here's how we're doing meeting our goals.
Could I just respond to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I had thought of that, and I actually looked back on the innovation plan today and was looking at, okay, what's our measurable, let's look at our goals and what can I report on today. But being that I'm kind of coming in here to tell you about our status, it was hard looking at those goals, which a lot of them are end-of-year updates, and they speak of, doing end-of-the-year surveys and assessing data at the end of the year. So I would welcome, I'd be willing to come back at the end of the year where I could kind of speak to the goals. I did feel like, and I brought the plan, that I could just say we're making progress this year to all those goals in the innovation plan. Some of the efforts that you've heard about tonight are specific efforts towards those goals. But I can't give you like any figures in terms of reaching those goals at this point in the year.
Thank you. Thanks. And I just want to clarify, my understanding is that this isn't a requirement for you to come and talk to us about this specifically as an innovation school. This is just part of what the school committee requested at one of our workshops, which was to hear from each individual school throughout the course of the entire school year. So this just happens to be the month that we assigned to you all. So it is tied in, of course, because Four Corners is an innovation school. However, that's not what this report is. It's not a report on innovation.
I'm sorry, I just was reading where it said an innovation school report.
Sure.
And I misunderstood it then.
Sure, Superintendent.
My recollection of the discussion, similar to yours, is that in years where the school committee hasn't just approved the school's plan, this could serve as the innovation report, and it could be the annual vote if there's a need for a vote that year. But because of the timing and that the school committee calendar is new, we didn't want to lose an opportunity for the Discovery School to come and tell you what they were working on.
There is an annual evaluation for the innovation status and the innovation plan. That's done by per the language in DESE, it's done by the superintendent, who does an annual evaluation of the school, or her designee. And then the only language is that's forwarded to DESE at the end of the year and the school committee.
Thank you. Member Farrow.
I just want to say, as a parent, I'm extremely happy with Discovery School. I attended Four Corners, just like Sarah. And I also know the heartaches of pick up and drop off. So I pay to go to after school just so I don't have to avoid pickup. I think this is great. I can attest to it, the fact that it's resonating with the students, or at least with my daughter. She comes home and I can see what theme that, I can feel the themes coming home with her, that they're important to her, and it's the interaction she's having with the staff and the teachers and the other students. It really does feel as though it's more than the stand and deliver that we're all used to when we were in elementary school. So I appreciate that. And now that I'm going to have a little bit more free time, that could be good for the Discovery School or bad for the Discovery School, depending on how you look at it. And maybe the school council someday will need a former school committee member as part of that group.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Alexander.
Yes, I was very happy to hear about how you're utilizing the school council. Real quick, how many members do you have on your school council, and how often do you meet? Because having them help you do the school improvement plan was just really, really good.
Sure, we meet once a month, and it is principal, three parents, 3 teachers or staff, and 1 community member. And right now, we have a full group. What was the rest of your question? Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? All right.
And just give one last plug.
Sure.
Right now we're doing a fundraising campaign for new school signs because we are really proud of our school and we want to identify it in front of the community. This has been something that the school and people at the school have been working towards for a few years now. So we have a fundraising campaign on fundly.com, and the link is on our website. And it's a $2,900 we're trying to raise with a local vendor to purchase these signs that we're really excited about. And we've raised just over $500. So if you could help spread the word, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks very much for this report. I think this combined with also seeing in our packet the monthly newsletters that are going out to families, it's really, really, really helpful as a school committee member to stay informed about each and every one of our schools. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you both for being here tonight.
Okay, the next item is a special education report. At our last meeting, we received a special education report that was written by Diane Ellis, our Director of Pupil Services. And so we walked through this report at the Budget Subcommittee with Ms. Ellis, but the full committee did not have a chance to ask any questions necessarily at our last meeting. So now's our time to do that. And Diane, if you'd like to join us, that'd be great. If you would like to say anything to start, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can just jump in, whatever you prefer. You have to press the button if it's not engaged.
Okay, it's so nice to have a microphone. I could just say that. So whatever the pleasure of the committee, it was a report that was requested by the committee. There was a number of different sections to it, questions raised, and so I tried to methodically go through the questions posed by the community. It was a very useful and fruitful exercise for myself as administrator, just to kind of synthesize information into what I've dubbed as the State of the Union report. And so it was a useful exercise and helpful in terms of kind of looking at some potential budget projections moving forward into next year. The report itself didn't actually include a lot of budgetary information outside of out-of-district projections, but I guess might be most helpful. I wrote this report a month ago, and this Friday I have our I have a big report due for the state, so my mind has already moved on to another direction in terms of report writing. So perhaps if the committee members have some specific reports or specific questions, I could answer them.
Committee members, any comments, questions? Member Hollins?
I don't have a question, but I do want to commend you on the updated report on out-of-district placements we received in our packets, that it shows that positive changes are 410,000 and increased expenses under 200,000, leading to a net 200,000 savings. I just wanted to thank you because I think that's a very hard part of the job to manage.
You're very much welcome for recognizing that. It has been a priority of the superintendent, myself, to building principles as we get together to really look at how we can, strengthen our in-district programs, how we can, I'd like to say, earn or hold in trust the confidence of our families and meeting their children's needs. I do have a little asterisk on that out-of-district report number because the thing that's most challenging, we can develop beautiful programs, we can work very, very diligently to contain costs and manage our resources very wisely in Greenfield. The thing that makes it very hard to project are the out-of-district replacements associated with children who are placed out of our community. And so the top of this report, you'll see a note about enrollment, and you'll see a reference to 6 LEA students. These are students that at any time in the next month, 6 months, a year, Greenfield Public Schools could bear financial responsibility for these students. So, and 6 out-of-district students, if they were to be in programs, I mean, that really easily could translate to $250,000. So, money saved. I think it really speaks to the importance of having a revolving account. I think it really speaks to the importance of looking at the supplemental requests so that we don't really spend down resources to a level in terms of our revolving accounts that then puts the district in an unfavorable position in meeting the responsibilities of these students that we are charged as being fiscally responsible for.
Superintendent?
I'd like to thank Director Ellis for putting the time and thought into this report. The committee has been looking systematically at its priorities and identifying the strength of our programs. In addition to the coordinated program review, which really commended our district for several areas of student services, I think this report distills some of what we do in pupil services, and there was a lot of time and effort that went into putting it in this format. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member comments or questions? Yes, Member Alexander.
Just for some of us that don't work in the district full time, just to give me a quick idea, when it comes to writing an IEP, what kind of workload does that place on you and your staff for timing and effort and resources?
In terms of writing one student IEP?
Yeah, if the family comes in and they have an IEP, just to give us, help me get an idea of how much work is behind getting one.
Sure, and I will give credit to many of the special educators in the district who I believe are faster at writing IEPs than I personally am. I should have really mastered the home key line in typing class in high school, so putting that aside, I'm not the world's speediest typist, but on average, there's planning prior to an IEP meeting, so confirming dates, making phone calls, aligning up members of the team so that we have representation that is required, general education, outside specialists, related service providers, the parent, if there are any advocates or support personnel who the family may want to invite to participate in that meeting. An IEP meeting, I think, is a really special opportunity to kind of get things right in terms of what the individual services required by the child, but also it's a legal binding document, and it really communicates sort of a pathway to what that child needs to affect meaningful progress in a program designed for the individual. So there's pre-planning that happens. So if you would sort of put a timeline on that, perhaps an hour, 2 hours of pre-planning the meeting itself. I do try myself to run an efficient meeting that kind of sets the stage, has the agenda, so people all know kind of what the tasks and responsibilities of the team are. But a meeting can be anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours long. I try to tell people the average attention span for a meeting really starts to wane after about an hour. So an IEP meeting can run, as I said, there's upwards to 4 hours in time thus far, and then writing the actual IEP, as I said, teachers are typically faster than I am, but writing an IEP, I joke and say that my first IEP that I wrote, I spent more time writing that IEP than I did giving birth to my son. So it can take time. It can take 6 hours, it can take 2 hours, it can take 8 hours. It depends on the different components of it. So it's a lot of responsibility, but again, it's an opportunity to do things well.
Any other questions or comments from members? I would just say thank you very much. This is a really comprehensive report, and I know that we all appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're very much welcome.
Moving on to our next item, we have capital improvement plan request. This is in your packet. There's quite a bit here to look at in this packet. Yes, I was just going to hand it over to you, Superintendent. If you could also give us a little brief about the process of the capital improvement plan and the committee, that would be helpful for everyone. Thank you.
I just have to say, it sounds like we won from the commotion in the hallway. I can't tell for sure, but they're excited, so I hope we won. Since we didn't get to see the game. I'd like to ask our Director of Facilities, Alan Schmidt, who's here with us, and our Director of Technology, Carol Holtzberg, just to come to the table. I don't know that you'll need to speak to these items, but I'd like to have you available if the committee does have questions. And of course, our business manager is here as well. So each year, the capital improvement plan, I believe for the last 2 years perhaps, has come in front of the committee. And we have a summary and a 5-year capital plan on top. And then behind that, there is a justification and a description of every single line and every single request. New this year is, in addition to that, there's a photograph of every single one. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you have a lot of pictures here. And this was, the Director of Facilities and myself have personally gone around with some additional staff and touring with the building principals. After the building principals spent time identifying their most significant needs in the buildings. And we really have one shot, one bite at the apple every year to say these are our needs. And some of these are projects that we've known about for a long time, and we're bringing them in front of the committee tonight, asking for your support. By way of process, there is a capital improvement planning committee. I sit on that committee, the superintendent does, and there will be recommendations made by that committee to the mayor. The mayor will then make recommendations to the town council for which projects are funded through capital. We present our projects annually, and recognizing that funds are tight, we hope to get as many of these significant projects accomplished, and we try to plan them out responsibly over a multi-year process. So not all projects are for the upcoming fiscal year. In addition, I'll note that some projects that were budgeted in the previous fiscal year could not be accomplished for a variety of reasons, one being construction, at a particular site. For example, fence work at Federal Street School, which was approved and expected in our last fiscal year, couldn't be accomplished during the construction that was already taking place on site, and so that had to be held. But another reason a project might not have been finished would have been if there was any kind of restriction on access to those funds in a previous year. So in those cases, you will see that those projects have rolled over, and we have prioritized our highest priority needs coming forward. And again, these are insignificant items. So I will just give you the broad level highlights, and then if there are questions, we're happy to talk about them. In all schools, we're looking, and I'm just going to give the broad ones. I'm not going to go, for those of you at home, I'm not going to give specific dollar figures, but all of these have quotes, and they've been carefully looked at, so we do have specific figures for all of them. In all schools, we're looking at needs in security system swipe cards at Federal Street, North Parish, and Four Corners, flooring repair at Federal Street in the middle school, which we've delayed for several years but want to make you aware of, asbestos remediation and flooring replacement, repairing of damaged fencing for security and to ensure that our schools have adequate protection, particularly for students during the school day. At the middle school, we're looking to upgrade and replace our auditorium lighting. We have been cited by the building inspector and the fire department for a need for additional lighting, and working with central maintenance. We actually hired a great consultant who made recommendations. Our current lighting is incredibly expensive and can cost up to $10,000 to just replace lighting in our middle school auditorium to an adequate level. And we need to repair that, or we're going to have an egress issue. And earlier this fall, we were actually shut down temporarily for any public events. And that's such a beautiful space. We want to make sure the community can access it. At Federal Street, we are making requests for paving and elevators. At Four Corners, looking at roofing repairs. We have one area particularly around the mushroom for the Four Corners folks out there, the fabulous mushroom, and in the connector where there are some leaks and some minor pieces that need to be adjusted so that the snow doesn't fall off the roof. I was looking at Four Corners roof today after this significant snowfall, and we're missing some really simple, I don't know the technical term for it, but those things that keep the snow from falling off the roof. So there's snow guards is the technical term. So it's a pretty simple thing to put in, but there are some upgrades needed there. And as you heard the principal speak about, some of the issues with the parking lot there at Four Corners are being requested. At Newton School, the parking lot needs repairs. It is worn, but in the back, there's actually gravel and no pavement at all. That has been identified in the past, and we believe we can accomplish that through prior year funds. In North Parish, we have a repaving project. Again, we are not requesting funds. We believe we can accomplish that with prior year funds. And at several of our elementary schools, there's some interior and exterior trim work that is damaged, that needs repairs. We believe that that will save money in the long term by repairing it before there's any additional decay, mold, those kinds of things. And then there are requests through our technology department. We do rely on capital funding for technologies. For example, large purchases like replacing copiers in district that have broken down, that we rely on for school committee packets and other materials. These are expensive, large equipment, not everyday small purchases. And so we do rely on requests through capital to address those. There was a small fund, there was a significant amount of technology funded through the high school building project. We're quite grateful for that, and that does come directly to Greenfield High School. So the only requests in the technology line are those for other buildings throughout the district. And that's all. I'll just give you that summary. If there are any specific questions, we're here to address them.
Do members have any questions or comments at this time? Member Hollins?
Sorry. It'd be nice if we could tell the folks in the hall that we're trying to have a meeting. If anybody's close by, I would just mention it. thought the pictures were terrific. And I was looking at these sheets, which put a priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I was trying to look at these sheets and point out which ones were priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's taking time to do that. So I was going to ask if you would point out on this one, because it's consolidated, which are the priority 1 for you? I've got the damaged fencing is a priority 1, auditorium lighting is a priority 1, but I wasn't able to get through all of this and also listen.
So anything that has to do with fencing, roofing is a top priority, and there are several areas where the pavement repair is a priority because it actually is beginning to create a bit of a sinkhole. It's actually, you can see that from a level, it has sunk below that. You can ask Alan if you want a better description, but we've also prioritized this by fiscal year. So the best I would say in terms of looking at your 5-year plan is we've pushed out, recognizing that funds are limited, we've pushed out to subsequent years anything that can hold off. And in some cases, these are things like elevator repairs. The elevator may be currently working, so we haven't put it in this fiscal year, but when they break, one elevator costs $250,000. Federal Street has north and south, that's 2, that's $500,000. So we have pushed that out and we're not requesting it, but we are sort of acknowledging to the committee that we are using parts that we buy on eBay, and when those go, they go without much notice. That's because they're outdated. That's the situation. So we've identified our rank order in terms of anything identified in a prior year is our top priority. Anything in FY19 is our next priority. Moving into FY20 and 21, you can see those reflected here.
Is that a follow-up question? Go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to say that I do think it's important for us to know what are the top priorities if we're going to take a vote. And I think, just my 2 cents, items that are related to safety seem to me like they should be a top priority. Like there's something in here on flooring repair, and the pictures, the description talks about safety and tripping on steps and floors, and it's listed as a priority 3, and Chromebooks for the elementary school are listed as priority 1. So I do think it's important when we vote. I'm not saying I'm against the Chromebooks. I'm just saying I think safety issues should be, I think it's important to know which ones were the top priorities for our vote.
Okay, I do want to hear from you, Superintendent, but I did pull out those that were given the number 1 highest priority label. Is it helpful for me to read them off right now?
Yeah.
I believe there's 8 of them that are in our packet. The first is access control swipe cards at North Parish, Federal Street, Four Corners, security cameras at GMS and Federal Street School. And that's all combined into one request. The second is fencing at Newton School, Federal Street School, Four Corners School, and North Parish and Newton School Professional Building. And the third is repair and replacement of the house lighting at the GMS Auditorium. Roofing repairs at Four Corners. Paving at North Parish parking lot. And this is one that's noted that there are prior year funds that have been applied to the request. And asbestos remediation at Greenfield Middle School, Federal Street School, Four Corners School, and Green River School.
That's number one then? That's a number one priority?
Yes, that's listed as a number one. And then I believe there's two more. Replacement of aging desktop computers for teachers, administration, and district staff, replacement of 10 remaining iPads, newer model smartboards and accompanying projectors, and replacement of laptop hard drives. That's all combined into one. And purchase of 9 charging station carts and 270 Chromebooks. 360 Chromebooks, 12 charging carts. Each charging cart accommodates 30 Chromebooks. So I believe that's all that were listed as the number one priority items. And Superintendent, did you have a response? I kind of jumped in. Nope.
Good job.
I have a quick question. All of this will go forward to the committee, is that correct? Unless we vote something out of it?
That's correct. They actually delayed. We were scheduled to present previously, but we wanted to make sure that the committee supported those capital requests before they came to the Capital Improvement Committee.
Okay. I think it's great to have such a comprehensive packet to move forward, and I really appreciate looking forward all the way into FY23. And as Member Hollins mentioned, the photographs are really, really helpful to help put everything into context. The AEL sinkhole, is this really a sinkhole?
So what I think happened, and I talked to the town engineer about it, is that as the drainage system silted up, the water was running across the top of the culvert and washing the sand and gravel from on top of the culvert out. And that's why you have this sinkhole forming there as the gravel washed away. We may have bought some time. DPW came in and did a really good job of cleaning the culverts out and flushing them out. So now all of the drains run properly over at North Parish. So we have probably got us a little bit extra time, but my biggest worry is every time I see a truck or a bus in there, that if there's not enough fill above that culvert, and it's a concrete culvert and it's been there for a while, that one day we may end up with a bus pulling in and dropping into a hole.
Thank you for that explanation. I do want to point out to the committee that this is one of the items that has prior year CIP funds applied to it. And so my understanding with that is that we are essentially moving forward with this. Is that correct?
Okay. We've listed it because we want the committee to be aware of it.
Sure.
And the fact that we're moving this project forward and that we're applying funds to it because of the description you just heard, applying funds to that before waiting for any appropriation in FY19.
Okay. Member Farrell?
Real quick before we vote, wasn't the Four Corners parking lot already approved?
Well,
I think that it was.
You can turn that off, okay.
If it has been, do you want me to call him and make sure that he funds it?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We have prior year approvals for the Newton project has been requested many years. Four Corner project was approved previously. These are all projects that are worthy of it, and the Four Corners, they're eager to move this forward. They've had a muddy parking lot for a long time as well.
I mean, Newton's with the muddy parking lot.
They both have had a muddy parking lot.
Yeah, so, but Four Corners has a really rough patch out there as you're leaving. So it will eventually have to be dealt with. But it's not probably as critical as a gravel parking lot on a pitch slope at Newton or a sinkhole at North Parish.
I would agree, but but I thought it had already gone through capital and got approval from the mayor and from the council.
Well, there was money in capital, and nobody had really put forward for it, and it was requested, and the town engineer looked at it and said, yeah, we can do this, but it didn't come to fruition, and the decision wasn't made where it should have been made.
Okay, gotcha.
Member Hollins? I just want to clarify, the request we're making now would not be for the year we're in, but for the year after the year we're in? None of this is for the year we're in?
It's actually, some of it is FY18, so my understanding is that as soon as the council votes the money is available, which is usually March or April, so it's actually prior to FY19. So it's actually FY, but it's listed as an FY19 because it's next year's project. So they go out to bid, and practically speaking, much of the work is done in FY19, but technically the funds are available as soon as council votes it.
So these are FY18 projects that may happen. I was just wondering that they're all listed under the year after this year.
If there was an appropriate designation for March or April of 2018 or later, that would be where they would first fall. So this is a 5-year plan that the city requests. So any new projects
and their first year right now is 19?
Right, but again, the council will vote it, we think, in March or April.
Okay.
That's true. It could not happen until,
but
right.
It's, okay, it seems kind of important, but in the, what is the amount we usually get each year for capital planning? This is a request for 1.16 million. But in the last couple of years, do we get that much?
It varies from year to year. I was on leave last year. I don't have that number in front of me. Business manager may. But we have very large projects some year and more small, modest repairs other years. So it varies widely.
Under the asbestos remediation, $275,000 is for tile replacement in Green River School, where we don't have a designated use for the school yet. With lifting tiles, you do have the option of putting down cheap carpeting or painting it or something. But should we be asking for $75,000 to replace lifting tiles in Green River, where we don't really know what we're doing with the school yet? Or if we're using the whole school?
I'll ask Alan to speak to that, but my recommendation on this is asbestos remediation is clearly a health priority, and regardless of the use of the school, you have children in a building, and where you have a need identified, you really want to move on that promptly. And in this case, the best scenario for asbestos remediation is a building in which no one is occupying it. It's cost effective, and it is, practically speaking, you can do it more quickly, and it's the safest way to do so. So one of the reasons for moving that forward, despite the fact that there is not yet a vote of the committee of what to put in there, although there are plans that have been being worked on, regardless, that building will need to be opened and students will occupy it.
So I can tell you some little history here. In the next, in April, the crawl space where the friable asbestos is going to be abated. The mayor already okayed that. We've already had the vendors in. They came in, they did we had an incredible turnout of vendors for the project. What I'd like to do is get the rest of the building abated. We have some of the classrooms with duct tape keeping the tiles in place. And you get to a certain amount of space where the tiles come loose, and you have to abate it. And if we're going to abate the asbestos downstairs in the crawl spaces while the school is closed, the smart thing would be to finish off the school, because when we did the other project for ADA compliance and they had to change the access to the classrooms, they ended up having to abate some of the tile. And at the time, the town said, well, why would you just abate one corner? So they abated an entire sections of hallway. So you have the remaining classrooms to be abated, and then you're done. The school will have a clean bill, and we won't have to deal with having any kind of project to do asbestos abatement, or worse, have the building or whatever it's going to be shut down because it's found to have an asbestos issue.
Thank you. Yes, Member Hollins?
At Four Corners, we have roofing repairs and parking lot paving. Is this including the blacktop where the children play? Or is this just the parking lot? Because we have children outside all the time, and the blacktop in the back and in the two different places, it's all coming apart in different levels. And is that?
As far as I know, this is just for paving the access and the lot.
If you haven't seen the blacktop where the children are playing, it's all uneven. If you're running, you step on it, you could hurt yourself. It's been a discussion. It's been discussed. Part of it was also enlarging it, the play area, because of the increase of students. And you just have to walk back there sometime. The basketball pieces are bent, but that back area, I thought, anyway, I think that's a high priority because we have hundreds of children playing out there all the time, unbroken.
Superintendent?
Mr. Toomey has sent me via technology an update that says the blacktop area is included, I believe. Play area behind the library, he says he can hold on, but that he wanted to provide that update to the committee. Electronic communication.
So it is included in?
Blacktop included.
Total. Thank you.
I do want to make one note to the committee. Alan is actually willing to walk through these facilities. You do have the pictures here, but if anybody wants to see these in person, so on next Tuesday, the 19th at 3:30, and the Planning and Construction Committee has also been invited, which I believe Member Holland sits on as the advisory to the school committee. So at 3:30 on Tuesday for school committee, there will be a tour beginning at Newton School.
Thank you. Will the Planning and Instruction Committee be advising the Capital Improvement Committee, or is it worth inviting that group?
They've been invited as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have one last question. Sometimes the school district will be told you can't have 1.1 million, you can have 700,000 or something, but you're just told you can't have the amount you want. In that situation, which of these would be first out, if you don't mind my asking?
I don't think I have a first out. I think that's really the process here is going to be for the Capital Committee to look at it and make those recommendations. If the committee is not comfortable with the recommendations coming forward tonight, I would ask that we table it, and maybe I can take some time to prepare a recommendation as to what to cut tonight before you leave for a vote. But
I was just wondering. No,
I will say, I mean, in previous years, technology has been cut, and the simple reason why is not because technology is unnecessary. It's quite necessary to our instructional program, but because it's contending with safety matters and things that have to do with the basic security and structural integrity of these buildings. So when things are prioritized, quite often technology does take a back seat. We would certainly hope that these requests are considered seriously, but we recognize that safety takes the first seat always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I did hear Member Hollins regarding the FY19 column. Is there a need to change that to FY18/FY19? Is that something that procedurally may stop any kind of action on these improvement projects if we are to receive that within this fiscal year?
It's a great question, but this is actually the town's form. This is the one we have to use.
Okay. All right then. Seeing no more, did you have anything? Okay. That's from Member Farrell, a motion to approve the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019. Is there a second?
There is. Second.
Member Tripp seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. That's all in favor. Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is a status update on town school HR MOU. Diana, is that you? Hi, Diana. If you want to come closer, you can. You don't have to. So I will yield the floor to the superintendent to give a report out on a status update of the town school HR MOU. We did receive this afternoon at approximately 2 p.m. a revised copy of the HR MOU with edits suggested by the town and some edits suggested by the superintendent. If you did not receive that via email today, please let me know. I know there were a couple of bounce backs. I tried to remedy that. And now, Superintendent, if you have an update for us.
So you have a draft in front of you that as you noted, was provided from the town earlier today. There have been, as we discussed at the last school committee meeting, probably 14 drafts of this MOU so far. And I think we are getting closer. I didn't prepare it for full committee distribution, but Member Tripp has a copy. I think there's a couple of things that are necessary to move this from where we are, which is a draft MOU, to completion. And I put those things on a list that is available if it hasn't come around to you. But we have had some really productive discussions. We've had 2 town school meetings at which this was discussed, one which had a school committee representative and one at which there was not. This particular version resulted from a meeting which didn't have school committee representation, and there were significant revisions still after this that were discussed, although are not reflected yet in this document. And I think that there has been discussion and there were questions from the personnel subcommittee that I believe have to be a little more fleshed out so that we can incorporate them into this document.
Thank you. So the list that the superintendent is referring to looks like this. That should be in your packet. Does everybody have that? It was handed out, yeah, separate from the packet. Thank you. I'm a little unsure as to how to proceed with this, I will admit. So I'm relying on all of you as my team members to help with this. We have had this conversation regarding the HR MOU for quite a long time. It has been in subcommittee, it has been in discussion between the town and the school department, separate from our table, and I believe it's been about a year that this has been an ongoing discussion. So I believe that initially we were hoping that by this time we would have a document that we could review and potentially vote on, but we don't have that before us today. And by receiving a document at 2 p.m. this afternoon as proposed draft language, I just don't feel that that's really a great place to be because we didn't have time to review this before coming to this meeting.
Would it be possible to ask Diane a couple questions?
Yes, I was just going to say that Diane Letourneau from the town HR department is here to answer any questions that we may have, and that is a fine place to start membership. Member Hollins?
I'd just like to clarify the document. It has no date, and it has no author, and it doesn't say where it's from. So could somebody just tell me that?
So this one-page document came to us today from the superintendent, and I believe that it was drafted today. Is that correct?
This document was discussed, it was written today in response to have something today to talk about the draft we received at 2 p.m. So it was authored today, but the points that are listed in it were the points of discussion in the last several meetings, in town school meetings, and also in the personnel subcommittee. They've just been put in one place, and the intent of this is to move the work forward, and I believe these are the things that we would just need to clarify before we can come to a discussion so as to be productive in this conversation.
So this is from the superintendent, and it's today's document?
Yes.
Thank you. It's a proposal or a summary of discussions?
This is a summary of questions that have yet to be answered and some recommendations to have in our hands before a vote on the HR MOU. Member Farrell.
And I know just before Nate asks his questions, I saw the email that's saying your email got bounced back, and that's as far as I went with it because I was walking out the door when I saw it. So I haven't even opened the attachment that was sent at 2 o'clock that I got at 4 o'clock. So I think the process, establishing a process to move forward is what we should discuss tonight, not specifically the draft that was sent, that some of us read and some of us hasn't. Not this piece of paper, but the actual draft MOU. And I think that we can do that so that you can move forward after tonight to come to some sort of finalized agreement, or to be quite honest with you, if it's determined to punt on the whole thing, well then determine that too and move on. But just as I would ask that we not get into the details of that actual document because I haven't read it, so I'm not going to vote on it anyways because I don't know what it says. I don't even have it with me. That was it.
Did you have a question, membership?
Well, I think I just had a couple of questions about the process and the last item that was sent out today. So that was initially a draft. Well, first, thanks for staying so late to hang out and address and answer some questions regarding this, which has been ongoing for a number of months, as you are well aware. What got us to the document today, you guys met a couple times, right? Is that okay? And then the superintendent put together a document and proposed a document to you. Is that correct? Okay. And then, and that was based on her understanding of the meetings that you had and what your understanding was. Is that, I'm just trying to understand because I think to move it forward, I think there needs to be an understanding of where it's been because for some reason we're not moving it forward and we've been discussing this for months and months and months.
The last document or draft, Superintendent on October 18th presented this last one that you're looking at, the black font part of it, and asked for any feedback from me. So I responded in red font so she'd see the pieces that I was adding. And then there was a town school meeting that you referred to where there was some discussion of what she'd like to see happen in that draft. And so the following day, Mark Smith shared those revisions that they discussed they'd like to see have come in. So I added that in the blue font to the introduction piece that we were talking about from that meeting. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Sure, but I guess I don't know how the discussion is to move forward. I think there are some bigger questions that, at least in the subcommittee that came up, is how is this type of merger supposed to save money for the school system? How would that merger happen? And then I think there's a question of whether or not the department can absorb the work. I mean, how's your department gonna handle taking on, I don't know exactly how many employees we have, but how's that gonna work?
Well, I put together some of the questions that were presented at the last meeting, so I do have responses to a few of those questions, and that was one of them, is the cost savings kept coming up as a question, wanting the answer, which is a fair question. So I have that. As far as the cost savings for consolidating the school in town, it would depend. If we can bring consistency to the processes, then there may be a savings. We can establish operational efficiencies by centralizing all human resource activities within a dedicated HR department, streamlining and updating processes to become more integrated in efficient and practical terms, as well as increased protection and liability. It was difficult to determine a true cost versus savings without knowing how many staff currently are doing these different pieces at the school and what pieces those are. But I did look at the history of what there was for staff when there was an HR personnel at the school. And we have, let's see, as far back as I went was from July 13 to 14 was a staff of 3, a full-time 0.5 and a 0.75. And then July 14 and 15 was a staff of 2, a full-time and 0.5. And July 15 to 16 was a staff of 1, that was 0.6. And the same for July 1st, 16 to June 30th of 17. That's what I got for figures.
Can I clarify, please?
Sure.
I don't mean to jump in, but I think this is, and to your point, Member Farrell, it gets into the weeds really quickly. When we're talking about human resources, and I might ask the business manager to join us as well for this conversation, but what we're talking about right now is one position, a position that Member Tripp previously had, which is assistant to the superintendent for personnel. But in addition, human resources is much broader than that and includes things like benefits administration, which is done often in the payroll office, hiring and firing, which is done in the superintendent's office, budgeting, salary and steps, which is done in the business office, training, which is done at the sites. It is not one position. So the reason I think that it has been difficult to get real traction on the HR MOU is because HR is broad. And if we're able to achieve efficiencies and consolidate, I think that can be a good thing. But the very fact that as a committee, the conversation is still on this sort of first data point, what are the cost savings, to me means that we don't yet have clarity on what is the problem that we're trying to solve. And as superintendent, I want to recommend to the committee when there are cost savings and when it's good for the district. And I'm concerned that we are so far into the process and it isn't yet clear to the committee what the cost savings are, if any. And we have heard discussion about needing to increase because there are, let's call it 450 employees on the school department side. Just to take, one simple piece of HR would be benefits administration, who handles insurance. Just that one piece alone would probably be require some additional staff because the town already handles all other municipal employees. So it is a big topic. It's hard to get your arms around. It gets into the weeds fast. People glaze over. It's understandable, but this is bread and butter to the work of running a school department. And so it's important to me to get it right. And I do not want to be obstructionist. I want to find efficiencies and collaborate with the town. But I'm at this juncture, I really want to make sure that the processes are in place, that the school committee can do this with confidence, and that it's good for the town and good for the schools. And we're not yet there.
Member Farrell?
And I think that those are some great points, and that's why I think there's a little bit of history that needs to be brought forward here, is that I can tell you what the savings will be. Zero cost savings out of operations. And I can tell you throughout every industry across the world, HR expenses, and when we talk about HR, we're not talking about just the hiring and firing, we're talking about all of the services that the superintendent just discussed. HR expenses are going up. And the reason is because when you are an employer, the ability, the job of being an employer has become more difficult. And that's why when this discussion started, well, actually over 10 years ago when it started, and that was to do centralized business functions, not just HR, but all business functions, is it wasn't so much about cost savings. It was about professionalism, and not just and I don't want to say that any department's more professional than another department. Having professional human resource department, townwide, organizational, for the entire organization, that can focus on the ever-changing roles, responsibilities, and duties that an employer must have. I know that what I spend on HR, and I don't have an HR department, as I only have 12 people in my office, but I do have an HR consultant, and my HR consultant comes in and says, and because I now have one, which the previous owner, which would have been my father, didn't have one, and his father didn't have one. And she comes in and she reviewed everything, let's say 10 years ago, and say, you're operating, not even 10 years ago, you're operating just like every other small business in the world, and you're doing it wrong. And you're going to get yourself sued if you continue to do it this way. Because I just did it the way we've always done it. So this discussion was more about trying to consolidate the services of a professional HR department so that employees are protected, so that employers are protected, and so that everybody is on the same page doing things correctly, so that where the savings might occur is the savings occur in a lawsuit that doesn't come because you did something improperly. Again, not saying that anyone is doing that now. I'm just saying moving forward, it's only getting more difficult. And to have people that keep up with human resources and the changing field of human resources is important. So we're never going to have a number. You're never going to. I can remember Lane Kelly sitting in a meeting when I was chair of the school committee with the mayor and members of the council, and her saying, well, there's a grant out there that we can apply for through the state that will come in and develop. Help us develop this plan. We probably should have taken them up on that at that time, or gone down that road. But she said, you know what you're going to save, and what that's going to tell you. You're going to save zero. It actually probably will cost the municipality money. At the end of the day, the municipal side of the budget, if we want to, the city side, will go up. And hopefully what happens at the school side is our budget stays the same, we just spend money somewhere else. So that was always the intent. It wasn't about what's the cost savings, because I don't think there'll be any. Where I think that the school committee maybe needs to start is getting an understanding of exactly what the superintendent said, is what exactly are we doing now? Who's doing it? How many people are doing it? Are there ways that we need to improve? And could having a centralized human resource department that's citywide, and I know that we say the schools are different from the police department, the fire department, the DPW, but they all use one HR department, and there are obviously going to be differences, is having the school committee as a whole, or specifically a subcommittee, and having a specific subcommittee that understands the role, the HR roles of the school district, and what needs to be passed forward to the town. Because before we know that, or before actually you all know that, you're never going to move forward with this. So I don't see it being something that can, even if that draft came through at 5 o'clock a week ago, it wasn't going to get passed tonight. Because I don't think we all as a school committee truly understand the HR operation of the school side. Until that happens, we're not going further with it, would be my thought, my idea.
Could I add one more piece, if you don't mind, just to try to finish explaining? We started at, when we first met, a long list of items that we wanted to assume. And as we got going, towards the end, we agreed to just simplify it to one piece to start with some near future ideas of other pieces that we could do. And so the piece that we were offering to start with, just to get it moving forward, was just doing the orientation of the benefits of any benefit eligible new hires. We already do that for the town. We do process and administer the health, dental, life, flex spending for all the town, school, active employees, and also retirees, which is currently 1,156 members. This piece here is a very small piece. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is the new hires at the school currently don't get a sit-down orientation, and that was the benefit that we wanted to offer so that we could explain all the ins and outs, how the insurance is bill ahead, so timing is of the essence for when they enroll as far as any retroactive cost. And then it would also help streamline our process, because by sitting down with them, they would be completing those forms and giving them all to us all at once, so that those can get processed into the system and enroll them. So we thought that would be a good beneficial piece to start with. And then once that's going smooth, then talk about adding the other pieces. But those other pieces wouldn't be added without a plan in place and an agreement on how those pieces would be added.
Okay, I saw the superintendent, are you wanting to respond? No, Member Hollins, you had your hand up too. So if you're responding to this.
Actually, we did talk about benefits administration as the first area. I think this is low-hanging fruit. I think it's an area that we could overlap and do it well. But just to clarify, currently the school is administering those benefits, and those employees do have sit-down meetings. Those are one-on-one meetings. That work is happening right now in our school department, and we really make it a priority, and I think deliver really good customer service model to our teachers, our substitutes, our cafeteria workers, our custodial workers, our instructional assistants, and that's an awful lot of work that's taking place right now on the school side. And we were having some conversation about shifting benefits administration entirely to the town side and having them take over that piece, and how that would be arranged if it was taken over by the town side would be separate. But that is happening right now on the school side for all school employees.
Thank you. Member Hollins?
What I wanted to say is, during my 6 years as superintendent, at least twice, every task of personnel was written out. It was probably 3 pages long. I'd have to go find it. It's an incredible amount of detail. And when you're talking about cost savings, it isn't just what you're paying. You're paying a person to do this. It's error reduction. We have all public schools that handle personnel, particularly school departments. We have 10-month employees. The city doesn't, as a rule. And you have to give people notice. You have a job, you don't have a job. If you miss a date, there are costs for paying people through the summer. It's one of the reasons we first put on someone in personnel. I don't want to go into it, but there are costs for when you make errors around contracts and things like that. So I think you have to look at cost savings in terms of unbudgeted costs that you end up paying. And I think the point about professionalism, it's great. I think the number one that says the Personnel Subcommittee has full oversight of every issue is wrong. I think the Personnel Subcommittee has oversight over personnel tasks. You've got 24 policies that really have to do with all kinds of other things, so the policy has to get in there. But overall, for 10 years watching this get bounced around, I think the whole idea that it's only the Greenfield School Department and the Greenfield City talking to each other about consolidating is short-sighted. We went over the policies in Section L specifically to bring forward to everyone's attention. We have a commitment to work with other agencies. We have a commitment to work with other public schools if it's problem solving and cost saving. We have a commitment to even work with private schools. There's 6 schools in Greenfield. They all have to do the same thing. They all have to report. They all have to induct. They all have to recruit. They have to give everybody insurance. It doesn't matter that it's different. I think we should open up the discussion and see if anyone else wants to join in, because you really need a really good personnel department that's well-staffed with people that are trained and that stay, and if this person leaves, somebody else can step in. It's like special ed. There's like dozens of labor laws and contractual laws, and you want to welcome people to Franklin County and help them meet people, and it's big. So I think, I don't know what, I know that our lead person, one of our key people in the office is retiring, so it's a really good time to think how new things are going to be divided up. I think we should open a discussion, see if anyone else wants to sit down and talk, and there may be someone else who wants to work on this with us that would get to cost savings. That's my thought. It's too long talking about the same thing, not being able to work it out, because neither the school nor the city has enough personnel right now. We even went so far as to move everybody together once at Davis Street so we'd have proximity and see if just proximity made it better, and it didn't. So I think we have to rethink who are the partners at this table wanting to collaborate to get a really good personnel department that's trained.
Thank you, Member Hollins. Any other comments or questions? Yes, David.
One of the documents that that were handed out is this what's it, 2017 edition HR Field Manual.
Committee does not have that.
Oh, they didn't? I thought we handed it out.
No, they receive documents 48 hours in advance.
Oh.
You have it.
I have it. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, so this is one of the people that my firm works with a lot. It's a document written by him. He was the director of HR for the Broward County Public Schools. They have, I think, 315 schools, 270,000 students, and a budget of $5-point-something billion. We thought that maybe this would be helpful just to help move the discussion along, because all it does is outline some of the things that are particular to HR in school departments. So at least when you're talking about it, it may be a good resource to help educate everyone on what takes place in schools. What are the things that are particular to schools? It doesn't say that you should or should not combine. It doesn't say you can or cannot work with other people, but all it does is maybe provide some information from someone who is extraordinarily experienced. He was also the assistant superintendent in the Cambridge Public Schools, so, he worked for a long time in Massachusetts. In our experience in other districts, there are definitely tasks that seem to work well when school districts and the town pair up together, onboarding of staff, new staff, and some of those types of things. But, there, I think, as Member Hollins pointed out, there are definitely things that are particular to schools, and you can sit people next to each other. There are subtleties that, to do it right and to not get yourself in trouble, I think it is important to have the knowledge. And I think, based on what I was hearing, of the trying to understand how it will save money, I would wholeheartedly agree. I don't think that is anywhere early in the discussion. Maybe years down the road when this thing has been rolled out, refined, decide what works and what doesn't. Maybe it can save money, but even then, I think the goal is working efficiently, serving people well, and honestly making sure that people don't get in trouble because something didn't happen or something happened that should not have happened. So I think if when you do receive these packets, I think it's probably at least worth flipping through, and then should something come up in the discussion, it's probably worth digging in a bit deeper. So,
are there any potential benefits to school districts that are outlined explicitly in that packet?
This actually talks more about procedures that work in general within school district. It doesn't speak particularly to how could entity A work well with entity B. It talks more about the specifics of HR as it should operate within public education. So I think that means that, when the discussion, I guess the thought being is when the town is able to lay out, these are the things that they can do really well, it would help maybe the schools to say, and these are the things that we need. Are there any of these things that we can, connect together? I think that's really what this resource can help at least inform the discussion.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Member Tripp?
What are we going to do what's going to happen to move the discussion forward? I think that's the bigger question, right?
Can we consider a motion on this? I'd like to make a motion that we set end of school year as a timeline and form a broader advisory committee to look at this topic. And one charge is to at least reach out to other schools in Greenfield, within the city of Greenfield, just to see if there's any interest, broader interest in collaborating on HR consolidation, just to find out. But I think we have to get some closure, and if neither the city nor the school department has the time to even do HR, then time sitting and talking about it, and maybe we need just an advisory committee and broaden the discussion.
I don't believe anyone said that neither the town nor the school have time for HR.
No, I didn't say that you said that, but we don't seem to be able to conclude the discussion with...
It has not been a function of time. I think Diana and I personally have been in no less than 12 meetings, at least 1 to 2 hours each in person, multiple drafts in between.
So I'll retract that and just say, could we have a motion to conclude this topic that we either by June and maybe broaden to have an advisory committee to look over what's been done and report. But I agree, we have to get some closure on whether we're going to pursue it or not.
Is there a second?
That's fine.
Okay, I'm seeing no second on that motion. I agree with Member Tripp that it's disturbing to me to walk away from the table without some kind of idea about what we're doing to move forward. This has been a long discussion. I think that everyone here is interested in this as an opportunity for the school district in collaboration with the town. My understanding is that some of our neighboring districts have done this and it's been successful. I think that we've all been interested in really seeing this through. There has been extensive conversation at the subcommittee level, and a lot of the questions that we have are here. It's good to actually hear someone say very clearly, Member Farrell, thank you, that we don't estimate a cost savings. It's come up a couple of times that there may be some very small cost savings in the initial first year, but moving forward, what I'm hearing is that there could be some savings and efficiencies over time, and that essentially the goal is to create a more robust HR department to better serve everyone. That's what I'm hearing. So part of what one of the questions that we have yet to answer is, why are we doing this? I think Member Ward mentioned that very clearly at one of our previous meetings. Why are we doing this? It was presented to us in such a way that this would represent some cost savings to the school district, which is why it ended up getting removed from our budget as a cost to our district in this particular year, with the removal of the 0.6 or 0.7 position of the HR assistant to superintendent of HR. So I'm still unclear on exactly why we are doing this if we're not going to see some savings. I do think that there is an opportunity for efficiencies. It's interesting to hear Member Holland's perspective related to collaborating with other schools here in Greenfield. That's a new thing that I have not heard yet in this conversation. I would also like to agree with some of what's listed here on the list that was provided by the superintendent, that my understanding of number one with the oversight is not necessarily that the subcommittee would be overseeing. Well, actually, was the intent that the subcommittee would be an ongoing committee to oversee this particular collaboration, or did you see this as a short-term oversight of the process of creating the MOU?
So I apologize that the committee doesn't have this document, but it was an attempt to, knowing that
No, we have this one.
No, you have it now, but didn't have it well in advance. And the reason it was provided was just what we're talking about. How do we move this forward? And it was an attempt to say what would need to be in place for this to succeed. And that first thing is some body, some group of the school committee who wants to be part of this process as it continues to move forward, to say this is working, this is what we're going to do. Oops, we hit a bump in the road. There's got to be some mechanism for saying here's how it's going. And there have been a lot of conversations so far, but formally the committee, if it wants to pursue this, has got to, put the skin in the game of saying who on the committee is going to see this through to the end and invest the time. As you mentioned, it does take quite a lot of time to get it right because we care about the quality of service to our employees, because we want to avoid additional liability. From the school side, we don't have data that says school employees are looking for better service. That isn't the data that we have. So the advisory committee or ad hoc committee or subcommittee, it could be a lot of things. The personnel subcommittee has served in that function, but there has to be some mechanism for the school committee to be involved in this process if you want it at all. And Member Hollins just sort of identified this idea of some kind of an advisory committee. If there isn't that, I think it's difficult to gain the kind of understanding of the complexity of very specific work that human resources at the town side does, that a variety of individuals on the school side do, to bring the kind of professionalism. If we're not really clear about what we're doing, we're not going to be precise in the results.
Just a couple more comments, Member Farrell. So related to this list, I agree that I would like to see some kind of legal counsel review or some memo from our legal counsel specific to the final document and the arrangement as a whole. And I do believe that there is a conflict when we share counsel with the town. We should be getting legal counsel from Attorney Smith or a separate attorney. As well, I would like to see, of course, an endorsement by the superintendent, endorsement by a subcommittee. And then regarding number 3, which is a provision to modify, withdraw, or extend the school committee's opinion. So my understanding is that with these sorts of collaborations, that a majority vote from the council or the school committee would be able to take us out of this arrangement. That's my understanding, that that's the law. And so I think that it would be great to have a provision to preserve the school committee's ability to get out of the arrangement if need be. Of course, that's not the intent. I mean, the intent is to start somewhere and build on it and invest in it. But with some of the language that I've seen in past drafts, it's been suggested that we essentially would no longer have that authority, or we would share that authority with the council. And I think that that is just a little too much to start off with. And I'd also just like to request that in the final language, I mean, some of the drafts that I've seen, there have been language that just really doesn't relate to what it is that we're talking about. We're not hiring the HR director. We're talking about an arrangement of shared services with the town. So anything related to the role of the HR director themselves, I think, is actually not relevant unless it's specifically talking to this particular shared service. As for moving forward, I do like the idea of having a subcommittee to potentially weigh in, but I also am not feeling optimistic about it given the amount of work that's already gone into this. Member Farrell?
I would just recommend that at this point, as far as moving forward, I think that you're going to have 2 new members of the school committee coming on January 1st. I'm sure there's going to have to be a shifting of members onto different committees, is that you have this document, which I haven't seen, but it's probably very good as far as addressing HR responsibilities for school districts, is that and we have, adding another subcommittee is just going to, you only have so many people to sit on these subcommittees, but so you could have the personnel subcommittee review this document, as well as meet with the superintendent and the current HR team of the school district to go through what you don't know where you can't figure out where you're going until you know where you've been or know where you are. And right now we don't know where we are, and so it's not even in a bad place because you're going to have 2 new members because they're coming in with the same knowledge as most of us have right now, which is not a real good grasp and understanding of the HR roles and responsibilities and duties that exist in the school district. So if the policy subcommittee takes this charge, reviews this document with the help with our business management team and the HR management team and the superintendent, figure out if there's some low-hanging fruit that could work well with the municipal side, as well as keeping in mind that the ultimate goal is to provide better services to the employees. And I agree that probably most employees they don't know if they're getting poor service because this is the only service they know, and they probably aren't. You know, most employees come to work every day, punch in, do their job, and leave, and everyone's happy just to get a paycheck. It's when the one that's not happy that you run into HR issues. So I think you could start there and find out, are there ways to consolidate so that it's a better organization for everybody involved. But primarily, I think where we need to go back, and it's almost, it might seem like it's going backwards, but I think probably if you don't go backwards and get a grasp and a full understanding of where you are right now, is that you're never going to get a document passed to begin with, and it's just going to keep being discussed like this. And I think the personnel committee could do that. And like I said, I don't know what that document says, but it sounds like the person that wrote it probably has an idea of the HR responsibilities of a school district if they had a $5 billion budget. So that's a good place to start. And I wouldn't consider it going backwards. And I know there's been some pressure to move this forward. It's been 14 years, what's 14 and a half years? It took us 15 to move out of Davis Street, and look how successful that's been. At least it gives us a place to go from here and go tomorrow.
Member Holmes?
Would it help if we had a clear goal of what we're trying to accomplish?
I mean, yes, I think that would help. I think part of the questions that have come forward are why are we doing this? Why are we looking at this? It was, especially given the initial presentation and discussion around potential cost savings. So I think that yes, we would benefit from refocusing on what it is that we're doing and what our goal is ultimately. Member
Just
Farrell?
on that, I don't think that you can have a goal until you have this discussion. I don't think it would be fair for this committee, especially with 2 new members coming on, to establish that goal until you have an understanding, because you've been on that side. I don't think the rest of the members, and I know the other 2 coming on won't have an understanding, so I think that needs to happen first. Also a little bit more, and I hate to say it like this, as part of the costs, the financial impact of combining and consolidating HR. Also, some of that came from promises that were made by the leadership of the council, and that if they saw that happen, they were going to support the budgets that we were putting forward. That didn't happen. We all remember that didn't happen. So these promises that were made in meetings is saying, hey, we want to see you do this, and if you do this, then we're obviously going to be more inclined to support the school committee and the mayor's budget for funding. Well, that didn't happen from the council side at the annual meeting. So there's a lot of things that happened in those meetings when this started, when it got brought back up 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. Like I said, it's been a long conversation, but that was some of the financial impact, was not so much what you'd save, but what you'd gain over here. Hey, if you move your HR director or the person handling that role, get rid of that position. The town's going to do it. You keep your $70,000. Well, we know ultimately that didn't happen. So it's kind of the way I was reading into it. But going back to, I think that would be a good place to start, would be with Member Tripp's committee that he'll no longer be chair of.
Any further comments or questions?
I just want to say, actually, that I think the committee has done a good job of digging into this. I don't think it's for lack of effort on the committee at all. We are never going to have a personnel subcommittee chaired by somebody who knows more about this. It is to show that it's a complex topic, because we do have somebody knowledgeable. So we could move forward on it, but we just are going to have to be very, very specific. It is a challenging topic, and I want to thank the town, because we've had some really fruitful discussions. We've learned more about the town. I think the town has learned more about how the school handles things, and those conversations have been productive, even if they clarify things that we've identified that actually we do well. The town has learned some best practices from us and vice versa. So I think it's actually already been a good collaboration between the 2 departments. And I hope that the council sees that what we did was really seriously look at and examine a potential efficiency. And just because right now we don't have an end product doesn't mean that there wasn't hard work. Speaking for myself, speaking for every employee that on the school department side worked on this, there was a lot of people hours. And so I'm proud of what we put into it, and hopeful that we can, feel good about the outcome.
Okay, so to summarize, what I'm hearing is that there is some widespread interest in continuing the conversation with a fresh start with the new committee. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm also, there's no motion on the table, so we could leave it this way, but it's quite open-ended. So I think it'd be helpful for us to have some motion or some kind of closure at the end of this meeting, knowing how we would like to proceed moving forward. Member Farrell?
I would move that this process would stay with obviously with the superintendent and the administration, but working with the personnel committee and reviewing the document that was presented today for HR. Again, having new members updating and educating this committee on the roles and responsibilities of human resources in the school district. Does that mean, why don't you reword my motion and make that more concise?
Oh, I don't know if I can. It's getting late.
But to continue, motion to continue the process through personnel committee and review the document, the HR document that's presented.
At subcommittee.
At subcommittee.
At subcommittee, okay. Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second that one.
Does everyone understand the motion? Saying yes. Okay. Any further discussion on this? Member Hollins?
Is it possible our minutes could mention the 4 tasks that have come up during discussion for future effort, which were to identify tasks of mutual benefit to consolidate. I think it was mentioned to look at the prioritization of rollout if it were enacted. I think you started by saying we're going to start here, and we're going to go there, and then go to there. To identify a cost benefit, for example, the personnel involved, which someone said, and look at potential efficiencies. At least that's what I wrote down everyone's talking about. Maybe not. It just seems so open.
Are you offering an amendment?
Or you just say they are part of the minutes because you just said.
I mean, yeah, it is.
That's part of the discussion.
Is that fine?
And review a document. It feels like we're just, but I don't disagree to keep it going, the conversation going.
Superintendent, did you have a comment?
I just want to make note of the fact that it is a few minutes before 10. We have a school principal sitting here waiting to give an update. I'm not trying to stop the discussion, but I'm not certain that we are being our most productive at this exact moment. So I don't recommend getting so specific as to delineate the tasks of the subcommittee, given that we're about to have new members and that the steps that were just outlined are more or less, I mean, you could ask Diana what we've just done over the last 7 months. I think that's what we've been doing. So I don't want to lock it. I mean, we're trying to move something forward. I don't think being that prescriptive right now is going to do that. And as Member Farrell said, it may be that the recommendation is there is no cost savings to be had. It's not effective for the town to take on the work of processing 450 more employees, and it's not in the best interest of the school district. And if that's the case, then it's my job to advise the committee on that as well. So I want to be clear that continuing to evaluate this is really important. But the results of that evaluation, I don't think we can dictate sitting here right now because we're not yet, we don't have the data, which is why we haven't moved it forward. So I think there's an understanding that we need to get the data to answer the questions.
Can we move the question and just act?
Yes, so there is a motion on the table. We have by Member Farrell to continue the conversation with the Personnel Subcommittee and further review at the subcommittee level. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I believe that's unanimous.
Thank you, Diana.
I just want to say thank you very much, Diana. Thank you very much, Jordana, and everyone that's been involved in this conversation. I think it's great that we have continued interest in furthering this discussion, and yes, I think that it is frustrating for a lot of folks that are involved in this conversation that we haven't necessarily gotten further, but I appreciate that there is optimism to come to a conclusion on this with the new committee. Member Hollins, did you have your hand up?
We passed the policy work in October. We passed the policy work in November. These are action items. Largely we pass because we give so much time to reporting. When Member Farrell started and we worked together in January of 2016, he said he had one thing he really wished we would accomplish before his term ended, and that was to vote the updated community use of school facilities. which is on the agenda tonight for second reading and vote. It's his last meeting. I feel terrible. We may not get to it. And I'm really interested in the Math and Science Academy. I don't know if we can do it justice to have a report now when everyone's so exhausted.
Well, he's still here.
You know, it's something we should think about at 7 o'clock.
Well,
7:30.
Yeah.
7:45.
I agree.
Now it's...
I mentioned it early in the meeting that I hope we didn't have to pass this again.
Let's keep going.
We mentioned.
I think we should keep going. We're very close. We only have 3 more items. And one of the school committee goals was to have more efficient and potentially shorter meetings. So we will hold ourselves to that moving forward. Thank you very much, Diana.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the Math and Science Academy transition update. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. And
How are you doing?
we're good.
You've only been up since 5, right?
Push. Okay. Well, first, thank you for letting Luke go about 3 hours ago. That was, I mean, he was, we made a list of children in the MSA that could come and speak to you. He was one that could do it tonight, and I think he spoke well and represented many of the students at MSA and GMS. There was no coaching there. He asked me today, what might you ask? What would you want to hear him talk about? And I just said to come and be honest, and he did. During the first couple months of the year, many of my teachers have surveyed the MSA students. I think it's a good place to start, how they are doing, how they are feeling. I tried to condense them. Many of the things that the students liked were the lunches, the teachers, the new community service learning block that we have. They really liked meeting new people, having a shared band, having classes with each other. There was more room, like the library and gym, and I think some of those are what Luke mentioned. Some of the dislikes were that there was an early start and a long day, but that really didn't change. I shouldn't even comment, though. That was their dislike. There was no swing set, and there was more walking. I pulled out 2 of the things, letters that they wrote to me. I'd like to read 2 examples here. One student wrote, what do you like about MSA being at GMS? They, and I don't know who it was an anonymous, as we wanted them to be. I like that I can see my friends more often. I like that I have MSA and GMS teachers, and I like that we have classes with GMS kids. That was the likes that this student put down. The things that they did not like was, I don't like how we had to be separated from GMS. We should have just become one whole school. I don't like how teachers teach MSA kids different stuff than GMS kids, and I don't like how some GMS and MSA kids don't get along at times. I think that kind of in a nutshell, maybe what a middle school is like. And another child wrote this one, and I did share some of this with the superintendent earlier. This person writes, one of the things I like about GMS is that I have been able to meet new people and make new friends. Another thing I like is that we have more options for electives, and they have added CSL, Community Service Learning. One thing I dislike is the fact that we have to climb up and down stairs all day long. And then they go on to say, a second thing I dislike is that we don't have a lot of time between classes to mellow and zen. And then there was a PS here. Can we replace the stairs with escalators? And I think that's really something that I wanted to bring to the school committee, committee to, if we could replace the stairs with escalators. You might want to talk about that at some point in time. You know, we have taken or absorbed, assimilated 150 people to the school. There was some difficulties or some stresses at the beginning of the year, things like all those people and all the children that were in the school before that, arrival, dismissal, lunches. You know, when we have all those people coming in together, you have to kind of find out how it's going and make changes. We've made some changes in all of those areas, and I think it's working. We've made some changes to other things in the day, whether MSA was going to be there or not. There are some reports that the DESE came and talked to us about. We could improve, and we did. Some things that GMS had done better than MSA, and some things that MSA has done better than GMS. And so we've taken those reports and tried to make the school a better place for all. I don't know what else. I mean, we've tried to minimize all the stresses from what the students have felt, and so that they can succeed and prosper in the school. So at this point, if I could take any questions, maybe that could focus my thoughts on what more information you'd like.
Any questions? Member Hollins?
Hi, Gary. Thanks for staying so late. Thanks for giving a report on what students feel. The vote of the school committee twice was to move the program to the middle school. And I guess my question is, what is the program? You know, I know what the program was before because it had been approved by a school committee before. It doesn't matter to me if it changes. It's just, I don't have any idea what the program is. Did we move it? Did we change it? Because Math and Science Academy was like a brand name, you know, it was something special. It was a full-day program. And if that isn't what we have, or is it what we have? So I don't know. And that's what would interest me. Do we still have an accelerated math science program? And if we do, what grades, and what is it?
So at the middle school, we have, as you know, 5 through 7. In the 5th grade, there are 7 classes. 6 of those are GMS, 1 is MSA. In the 6th and 7th grade, there is 1 team of just GMS in the 6th, 1 in the 7th, and then there's a split team MSA in 6th and 7th. MSA is the way, I think the way we define it is a child and their family who has asked for and received more math and more science. So in a day, a child at MSA has a double amount of math and a double amount of science as compared to the rest of the students that aren't in an MSA. I don't think that's different than was before. The accelerated part, I think we, over the years, have adjusted that, if adjusted is the correct word. What we try to say is instead of accelerating a child into standards from future grades, we try to challenge them with deeper knowledge in that grade standard. So if a child is in the 6th grade MSA, they are getting 6th grade state standards. They're not getting 7th, 8th, 9th. In the past, we've found that those type of accelerations, teaching a child in a particular grade standards from another grade, has caused problems, actually. Pushing kids too quickly forms holes and gaps, and then when they get to those higher grades, the teaching is sometimes confused on what are we teaching them. We've already taught them this. I think challenging, and Dr. Hollins, I think that in my mind is what MSA was all about, challenging children and giving families more options. Again, that was my definition. I'm not, I think we were pretty close to that, but so challenging, I believe, is still there, and giving families more options is still there.
So they get more time in math and science, but they don't have physics or integrated chemistry and biology for 2 years, right?
That is correct, because those standards aren't in those grade levels. That is correct.
And so they're not getting I'm not complaining, I'm just trying to clarify. So they're not getting Algebra 1 in 7th grade?
They are not.
Okay, so it isn't the same program, which is fine, but it isn't. So they get more math and science, but they're not getting the program.
That is correct.
Okay.
Could I clarify something? Throughout the Greenfield Public Schools, one thing that we do very well is we personalize learning. We had a student at the high school recently who wanted an accelerated program of studies, and we have a policy on accelerated studies. And the principal, the guidance counselor, a team of teachers coordinated a plan for the student to be able to accelerate through their program of studies in a more accelerated way. When a student accelerates, they have to make choices about what are they doing and what are they not doing, and the student doesn't always choose that route. But in the Greenfield Public Schools, I think one of our strengths is meeting students where they are. One of the reasons that double math and double science appeals is because it makes MSA accessible to students who may be interested in STEM or STEAM, but not necessarily at the academic level to accelerate 1 or 2 grade levels, but still have a very strong interest. And MSA in its current form doesn't discourage anyone who has a very strong interest in math and science. And to me, that's a really, really important component, is that it broadens it. But that's not to say that if a student is able to reach a higher standard, that is not available to them. It's just that as a course of study, what we found with students who had gone through the accelerated program is actually we were spending some time providing support to them on the other end, where they had gone so quickly that the depth of learning wasn't there. And in the end, we want these students to leave with rigorous understanding that they own, that they have mastery of, and not a cursory level. So we don't routinely accelerate all students through that program, but when students are ready for an acceleration or a challenge, we have demonstrated and continue to meet those learners. And when they need remediation, they need practice on particular skills. GMS has developed a way through a skills block to address and support where they need to strengthen and shore up. So I think this meets both accessibility and personalization in a really effective way.
The part that we've tried to push is to apply once a child understands, is to apply that knowledge, and that's where we try to go deeper.
Any other questions from members? Member Hollins?
Is it really it's going to sound like, it doesn't matter how you've done this. So I just want to understand, there's no specific curriculum for the students that get extra time. It's extra time, it's up to the teacher what to do using the 6th grade standards. Or is it a specific, like everyone gets robotics, or is it something specific, or is it?
The extra science, or the second science block for the MSA students, is off of what the other students get, because the standards are so large that we can never get to them. So there is a lot of technology in that extra class. So the children in MSA science get things that the other students do not get. That is true. Does that answer your question? Does that?
Yes, I think what I understand is the Math and Science Academy, which was a full-day program where all the parts linked together and they were different. The students got physics, and they had an approved different program. That isn't what we're doing, and we're doing something different that sounds like a STEM enrichment program. And I just rather it be called what it is, because it isn't really a full-day academy. It's different. We didn't transfer it, we changed it. And that's fine.
I think it's been, over the years, it's been tweaked all the time to try to improve it. I think there were some years where many of the children didn't get English every day, and that caused some
I just
problems.
want to explain. We spent 5 years developing a program, a specific program program that was approved by the school committee.
She's not complaining, by the way.
All right, okay.
But it isn't the same program, that's all. And it's got the same name, but it's not.
There were some serious concerns with some of the programs as developed, and without getting into the past, I think it's important that we've kept the elements of MSA and the integrity of MSA. And no, not every single thing is the same, and the physical location is not the same. But the standards change. We respond to what our learners need in each as they change and evolve, as our learners change and evolve. And if the committee as a whole, as opposed to individual members, would like additional information, as our curriculum for the district has also changed, we can provide that. I do believe there are some differences of opinions about some of the statements made tonight.
Yes, I believe that's correct. 1 minute. I just want to also recognize that it's important to note that all of our programs really are dynamic, and we are always responding to our students. As the superintendent has mentioned earlier, that we do a very good job of personalized learning here at Greenfield Public Schools, and part of that is having flexibility in our programs and growing our programs. The Math and Science Academy started very, very small, and yes, I would expect that it would look different today. Member Alexander?
I just wanted to bring up a point of order that this is just an update, and I'd just like to point out that this is just basically an update of the program, and this is, to me, is starting to sound very, very close to a hearing, in which if we want to bring this up in an agenda in the future, but basically Principal Tajan was here just to give us an update of what's going on right now, and we're going into the history and what's going and all that, so.
Yes, point taken, thank you. Superintendent?
I wanted to also remind the committee and to thank the members of the transition team that met through this fall, and really, as Principal Tajan spoke about, there were some hiccups, I think, starting, and those were addressed pretty quickly, precisely because there was a sort of a community process for support, and the school was receptive to that. And I think that model really served the middle school. Students have a voice, parents have a voice, and the administration is responsive to that. And I think having students talk about their experience, what we've learned is these are children that are happy in a school building, that once they get through the doors of the school, do not feel overwhelmed by a large building because they're developing relationships within that building. And I spoke about this early in the year, but it's really powerful to hear from a student's perspective that what they don't like still are the perceptions of differences. So even while we strive to keep some unique characteristics of this program, it's actually the students that are saying, I want to make sure that there aren't artificial divisions. So we want to make meaningful distinctions where it supports our students, and we want to create broad opportunities for diversity, for discussion, and to learn across those differences. So thank you, Principal Tajan, for that report.
Thank you. So, everyone, we have 2 agenda items left. So we've already discussed the school committee goals. That's done. We've also affirmed the first set of policies moving forward with no change. So that's done. So our next item is policies for first reading. If everyone has had a chance to review these policies, we could, if we wanted to, go ahead and vote them as in one go. This first reading essentially recognizes that these policies are now up for discussion at the subcommittee level, and that input is welcome on these policies. It also gives the public the opportunity and recognition that these policies are up for discussion so that they can weigh in as well. So if there is, if everyone is in agreement, we could entertain a motion for first reading of policy BB, JJ, JLD, KI, and KLG. Yeah, I want a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on these first reading items? Superintendent?
First, policy BB, I support a change on this policy. There are some issues with some of the changes that are proposed are necessary, but I do have a few areas that I would like to note some concerns, and these include feedback from principals and our Director of Pupil Services.
Point of order.
Yep.
First reading, you don't need, it's just pushing it through this thought process. Goes to the next process. First reading is not, we don't make it.
I would like to note that people have not been able to participate in the school committee subcommittee policy process because of the frequency and intensity of the schedule, and that we have concerns in policy KI regarding video, audio taping, confidentiality, and parent guardian, and some concerns around KLG regarding relations with police authority. If you want to vote these in, I can submit these comments to the chair, but I want to bring forward the careful attention that school staff are putting to these policies, and the fact that at second reading, it's hard to have a robust discussion, and that we don't always have an opportunity to participate in the subcommittee level. And that is of concern regarding the need for school staff to have input into the policies that govern our work.
What do you have? Is it? Yes.
There really isn't a vote needed on first reading for anything in go. And if our policy says that we should change that, we can do it.
No, it doesn't. We don't need to vote on first reading.
Okay.
It just needs, all it is a first reading to say, this is going to be talked about. The fact that these first readings come with actual changes, that doesn't even technically need to happen. It could just be we're going to have a first reading about a policy, which means we're going to talk about it in the subcommittee. I understand the concern.
It just shows what's been talked about so far.
But all of that could be scrapped. It could go back, it's a first reading. I just want to know that none of it means any support. We don't need to vote it. We don't support it. I haven't even read it.
Some of us have read them, though, and you're absolutely correct, and I appreciate that clarification. If they went from a first reading to a second reading in the next meeting, it would be easier to accept that they just come forward once and then they're voted the second time. Some of these policies come forward for first reading, they don't come back for a year. It's very confusing. So I just wanted to note to the committee and have it reflected in the minutes that there are some recommended changes to these policies for first reading, and if those comments could be incorporated before they come back with time to review and comment before they come to the subcommittee, that would be helpful, or before they come back to the full committee. Thank you.
So, Superintendent, if you could forward your comments to the full committee, then everyone will have it. And if no vote is needed, then we don't need to vote. Member Hollins.
Anytime there's comments in writing or in person, we take them into consideration. We had a couple of these are fairly important policies. The visitors to the schools, about safety. We had 5 people there, including school resource officers. So we do pay a lot of attention to that.
Okay, there is a motion on the table. Would you like to withdraw your motion?
I'd like to withdraw.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. These are first reading policies. We'll move on to policies for second reading and vote. With these, we should be reviewing them closely. Would we like to start with KF?
Yes, I was just going to suggest we start with KF, the community use of school facilities.
Member Hollins, would you like to walk us through?
Yes, this was worked on for a year and a half before our term started, and we've met on it maybe 10 times. Should I read it? Please don't read it.
Yes.
School committee desires to promote the use of its buildings and grounds for educational, recreational activities subject to school district values and policies, regulations it establishes, and provided such use does not interfere with the use of school buildings and grounds for school purposes. That's the main thought. In creating community use guidelines and priorities, the school committee has these concerns: programs that benefit Greenfield students and families, safety and security of buildings, students, employees, and visitors, preserving the condition of buildings, equipment, grounds for school purposes, adherence to school committee policies and individual school guidelines, assuring users have appropriate liability coverage, guidelines for rooms with specialized equipment, inventories and regulatory rules, fair and reasonable fees while assuring the district does not incur unbudgeted costs, strict compliance with state laws regarding no alcoholic beverage, drugs, weapons, or smoking on school grounds and buildings, enhancing the Greenfield community through use of school buildings and grounds, permission and priority of use. This changed. Applications for permission to use buildings and grounds be obtained through either the respective building administrator or the office of the superintendent. Here's the form. Only the superintendent and his/her designee are authorized to approve and schedule the use of school buildings and grounds. All organizations wishing to use school facilities will be expected to share in the direct cost, if applicable, attributed to the use of facilities. Reference the policy. School committee cannot, should not absorb any additional unbudgeted costs, custodial or otherwise, for non-school activities. School facilities will be used in accordance with MGL and school committee policy and regs, including a rental fee schedule approved by the school committee. In the event of conflicting calendar requests, and absent a situation that requires an exception, the superintendent and/or superintendent's designee will make decisions about school use by the following prioritization. This changed. National electives, number 1. Number 2, Greenfield public school activities. Number 3, other programs for school-age youth in this priority. A, programs connected to, supported by, or affiliated with Greenfield school programs. For example, before and after school child care programs, art space, youth orchestra, certain recreational department programs, PTO programs. B, programs for school-age youth sponsored by nonprofits or city departments. C, programs for school-age youth provided by private profit-making groups or businesses. 4, official town public hearings and political activities. 5, fundraising programs and activities to benefit the school system. 6, other city departments, including the rec department, programs for adults. 7, local nonprofit and non-commercial organization activities. 8, metropolitan civic, educational, social, religious, organizational activities if a substantial portion of the members are residents of the town. 9, activities of other organizations when approved by the school committee or superintendent's designee. The superintendent and principals must be aware anytime buildings and grounds they oversee are being used by the community.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Superintendent?
Yes, can you clarify when this was discussed in the last 3 subcommittee meetings in this month?
I don't know that I can at this hour without my notes, but on this policy itself, it says it was reviewed October 20th, 2016, October 24th, 2016, December 7, 2016, December 13, 2016, April 6, 2017, 10/5/17. At a first reading, December 14, 16, and a second reading and vote has been tabled since then.
So no discussion since our last meeting on this. Has the school business manager provided you any input on the community use of school facilities or the fee structure?
Well, we're not talking about fee structure. We're just talking about the policy. And I don't remember that right this minute.
Okay. And did you consult the superintendent before adding additional job responsibilities, including the superintendent must know anytime the building's being used?
Well, you must have some thought about that, but the policy's
I
been
do, but
going
I'll
round
save it
and
at this
around.
time of the night. Well, it's coming up for second reading, so now's the right time, I believe.
what is
So
the
I'd
issue?
like to just ask, I didn't see this reflected in any of the minutes from the last month, and I also didn't see 3 of the other policies reflected in any of the minutes. And this was one of the meetings, I believe, that I wasn't able to attend because it's scheduled when I was known to be unavailable. So I'm not clear how to provide meaningful input.
Superintendent.
Prior to coming into this vote, because there hasn't actually been a subcommittee conversation at which we could address this, although it's been on the agenda at the subcommittee level in the last month several times.
It's been carried because it's just been carried waiting to get a hearing, but there hasn't been any input to change this particular
Because
policy.
it hasn't been discussed at the subcommittee level, despite school business manager and superintendent being ready to speak to it. It hasn't actually come up because of the sheer volume of policies. So I just want to let the committee know that actually this hasn't appeared to have much subcommittee discussion. And you may vote this policy should you wish to, but I'm concerned here about process.
We don't keep talking about policies when we've decided what to recommend and there's been no feedback and we don't have any issue with it.
I just don't have any minutes that reflect any discussion on this policy.
Member Farrell.
I haven't been on the subcommittee for a year now. I know in the 216 there was discussion. I don't think you're debating that. In 216 it was debated or discussed, and I know it was discussed with the business manager at that time. And I think there's one way to address the additional work, and I actually picked up on it when you were reading, rather than only the superintendent and his or her designee, and that could be changed to or his or her designee.
Where are you?
So permission and prior to use, first paragraph, third line, because I think that's what the intent is, not and or.
Just to make the and and or.
Right, so that it can continue on in the process that it is right now, which is the superintendent and or her designee. And I'll tell you why I wanted this addressed, and one of the major reasons was one of the reasons was the fee schedule, which we're not addressing tonight. But there are issues with the current. Well, I don't know if there's issues with the current policy or they're not adhering to the current policy. But, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only member that could probably discuss instances where gym space was being used by adults when priority should be used by children, or when requests were made or have been made for use of particular spots for children, Greenfield Public School children, maybe not Greenfield Public School activities, and it can take 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and I have documentation to show this. We're not getting approval. So that was, was one of the big things that when I did run, I said, either the policy probably needs to be tightened up, but the process needs to be tightened up as well. And other than that, I think that for the most part, while the language may be different, the idea was we need to make sure that the buildings, school buildings, #1 priority are children of Greenfield. Taxpayers, but priority being children because they are school buildings. And I think that does this here. And I think by changing because I agree, it shouldn't be just the superintendent the superintendent shouldn't have to oversee the use of all the school buildings, and know everything that's going on and have to approve everything and have to sign off on everything. And but that can be fixed by changing all the ands to ors. But other than that, it's a pretty comprehensive policy, and I've read every policy in Franklin County. Many are not as comprehensive as this, and they probably should be a little bit. They should be more. And I'm not one for wordy policies, that's for sure. So I'm okay with it. But again, any policy, it can be changed. If we find things that aren't working, it can be changed. But I think this will at least say that the school committee's priority is the use of these buildings should be for school-age children in Greenfield.
That was the emphasis of the change, and to make sure the guidelines, what was important to the school committee, safety, not incurring costs, it was clear. The one we started with in 2016, it was worded in a way that was awkward. I remember that. And a lot of time was spent trying to reword it.
Membership?
I feel comfortable going forward with this. I would echo Member Farrell's comments. Do we agree to add "or" to that line?
We don't currently have a motion on the table. Are you?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Move to accept and approve policy KF.
With the change.
With the amendment so that it reads superintendent and/or his or her designee in the first paragraph of the permission and priority of use section.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, any further discussion? Superintendent?
My concern with this policy is about process. I agree with the comment that Member Farrell just made, that priority should be for Greenfield Public Schools students and school activities. But in addition, this affects the community, and my concern, and the reason I stated those concerns about the public agenda and the subcommittee, is because if a member of the public wants to give input on the community use of school facilities, and there isn't actually an opportunity to do so, that makes it challenging to serve the intent of this purpose. So that's my concern, and I think I've stated my point.
Thank you. Any other? Yes. Sure.
There are two places on the first page beyond the subtitle commission and priority of use. Section, the last sentence in that paragraph, is that only the superintendent and or superintendent?
That's what I...
Yes, the last sentence in the first paragraph of permission and priority of use.
What happens to the very last sentence of the policy? There must be a way of accountability to do that. Is that
Yes, I would. Is that fair? I think that, yes.
Principals should always know what's going on in the building, principal's building. I can't think when the superintendent would schedule something for a building and the principal not know. Maybe.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. So I just want to take the temperature of the room. I know that we're all tired and it's very late. Are we interested in entertaining a motion to table the next 3 items? Yes.
I would suggest of the remaining 3, I can support without change. Nope, I take that back. There is MASC updated language on this. If you wanted to approve one additional one, the only one that I would submit for approval, that having read this subcommittee minutes that was discussed, was BDA organizational meeting. And there were changes that we discussed at a recent meeting about that one, which are fine, and I would support.
Motion to approve BDA.
Second.
All right. Okay. School committee organizational meeting policy BDA. For the purpose of organizing the school committee at its first meeting in January of each year, The school committee will elect from its membership a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and a secretary, all of whom will hold their respective offices for a term of 1 year or until a successor is elected. A majority of the members of the school committee will constitute a quorum. The election will proceed as follows. 1, nominations of the office of chairperson will be made from the floor by the superintendent or designee. The chairperson will be elected by a majority roll call vote of the members present and voting. If no nominee receives a majority vote, the election will be declared null and void and nominations will be reopened. Upon election, number 2, upon election, the new chairperson will preside, calling for the election of a vice chairperson and secretary in order. The procedure used for their election will be the same as that for electing the chairperson. Any vacancy among the officers occurring between organizational meetings will be filled by a member elected by the school committee. The election will be conducted as described above. Following election of officers at its organizational meeting, the school committee will proceed into such regular or special business as scheduled on the agenda.
The change here was really just the date and who calls the meeting to order to get to a chairperson. I move you approve policy BDA. Oh, we did that already?
Yeah.
With the motion.
The motion was made.
Sorry. Tired.
I do have a clarifying question. So nominations of the office of chairperson will be made from the floor by the superintendent or designee. I think that what you're trying to say here is that the meeting will be opened by the superintendent or a designee. Is that correct?
They're going to be taken on the floor.
Yes, the idea is somebody calls it to order, calls for a chair, you get a chair, and that person takes over, but it's not a member of the committee that does that in case someone would nominate the person who's... Yes, that's the intent.
In the past, we've had nominations made from committee members themselves. I recognize that that could be a designee, but how are we designating that person?
The only change is adding the words by the superintendent or designee. It already says nominations are made by the floor, which isn't clear what it means. That's why we added the words.
But how it's worded now implies that the superintendent is the one who does the nominating. I think I would suggest that we change made from the floor to taken from the, essentially the...
Taken from the floor.
Well,
In other words, the superintendent says, I'll now entertain a motion for a nominee for chair.
Correct. Yes. You're the facilitator of collecting the nominees for the... That's how we word that.
Yes. The way that I read it is that the superintendent or designee is actually the one making the nomination.
Right.
And so I think what we want to say is that somebody else is opening the meeting, the superintendent or the designee is opening the meeting, and they're opening the floor to nomination.
New words.
What if we just tweak the wording so it's that the superintendent or designee will accept nominations? So put it at the beginning instead of the end of the sentence.
Sure. The superintendent or designee will
accept nominations
for the office of chairperson. Period.
Will accept nominations from the floor for the office of chairperson.
From the floor. Okay. Just to read that back for the record, the superintendent or designee will accept nominations from the floor for the office of chairperson, period. Is that correct?
Got it.
And everything else is the same?
Perfect.
Great. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. is there an interest in continuing, or should we entertain a motion to table the last two, B, D, E, and G, C, G?
I'd like to motion we table substitute teacher employment. If we table subcommittees of the school committee, which we have to vote on at our next meeting, then I move that it come up first. It's just important, and it isn't reasonable that 3 months in a row, it's the very last thing we talk about when we have to have subcommittee decisions in January.
So I'm hearing two motions in your comment. Yes. One is, the first motion is to table GCG. Okay, and all those in favor of, right, let's vote. All those in favor of GCG being tabled till next meeting? Aye. Okay, were you an aye?
I was an aye.
All, that is unanimous. And then I'm also hearing a motion to table B, D, E, subcommittees of the school committee, along with the request to add it as a priority agenda item at the next meeting.
I'm not going to make the motion to table it because I think it should be the sitting committee that's worked on subcommittees for 2 years concur with what those subcommittees do, and not new people who don't know what the subcommittees are or what they do. I just think it's our responsibility to clarify what those subcommittees do.
Okay. So there's no motion to table. Is there a motion on the floor regarding BDE?
I motion to approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. Policy BDE. There's a significant amount of changes to BDE.
Could I explain?
Yes.
That this came up for second reading months ago. It was sent back to committee because this committee wanted a description of the committees, not just the title of the committee. So there were 2 or 3 discussions, I know the mayor was at 2 of them, on what the subcommittees do. It's been passed out to the whole school committee before. I don't think we've had any comment back not approving what the wording is of what the different subcommittees do. It doesn't mean you should agree to it, but it's been waiting for a long time for someone to say, these are subcommittees and here's what they do.
Yes, Superintendent.
There was discussion by one member, I'm not recalling who, at this hour, at a subcommittee meeting saying that there should be, unless I'm thinking of a different policy, which is possible, that there should be a list of the standing committees, but not this detailed description of each. I understand the desire to clarify for the incoming committee, but these subcommittee descriptions have not been clear for the entire time that we have had these descriptions, and yet it hasn't hampered the subcommittee's ability to do its work. And new members coming on might choose to express their skills or talents on the committee, and I think it might be a good time to allow them to weigh in on the process. We have a good draft here. So the current sitting committee has not left the new committee without any guidance on the topic, and I would recommend that these not be voted until the new committee is seated, and several members of the current committee, including Member Hollins, are here to provide continuity for the incoming committee and can continue the discussion.
It was a vote of the school committee to bring this back with definitions. It was our unanimous vote to do that. And each committee can look at what it does.
Okay, I'm going to read this very quickly, and then we can go from there. Subcommittees of the school committee, policy BDE. The school committee will have, pardon?
Sorry, can I ask one other question?
Yes.
Was this discussed in subcommittee in December? Because it was also not reflected in the minutes.
I don't remember, but I know it's been discussed several times. I just don't have that in front of me. If I did, I could, but I don't think it's...
My concern is when they come forward for a first reading, the committee says, don't worry about it, it's a first reading. And when they come forward for a second reading, it's not even clear that they've been discussed in subcommittee.
If the mayor were here, he'd tell you we went over it twice. This policy with these words has been passed out to this committee.
It may have been passed out to this committee, but it doesn't mean that there has been a robust discussion at the subcommittee level. I know I have not participated or provided any input into this policy, which is fine. The committee may choose to vote it. I'm simply raising the issue that at 11:15 on the last meeting of this school committee, it's not clear to me that there has been a subcommittee discussion. There were no minutes reflecting it. It's hard to provide meaningful comment. Thank you.
I'm going to move to table the discussion.
Okay. Motion to table is not negotiable, so we will vote on a motion to table policy BDE. All those in favor of tabling policy BDE?
There can be no discussion on a motion to table. It's not debatable.
All those in favor?
No.
Aye.
Member Ward, aye. Aye. Member Alexander? It's a no. I am an aye, so motion to table passes. We had 2 noes, Member Hollins, Member Alexander.
I just want to say we're passing this based on a comment that it wasn't discussed. This has been discussed. Member Alexander knows it's been discussed. The mayor who's on our committee knows it's been discussed. And this is what the school committee does. You know, there's a lot of policies about what the superintendent does. This is what we do in our committees.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out. This is a very, very long meeting. It is 11:47. I just want to say... 10:47. I'm sorry, 10:47. See, I can't even tell time anymore. And Member Hollins, your comments are noted. This is an important policy. But yes, I think that we have all reached the end of the evening. So thank you, everyone. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I want to thank everybody for working with you. Thanks.
I want to know if Tim's still buying drinks.
All right.
Love it. Okay, all those, are we adjourning here? So we have a movement to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Aye, second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.